Good morning, good afternoon, and/or good evening, SMITE fans. Happy weekend. Welcome to day 2 of week 4 here with the SCC. I'm Supersonic Blur. We've got the EU side of things here. It is the Niflheim Wargs versus the Solar Scarabs. We've got this matchup today. I'm not doing this alone, probably lucky for you lot. I have a fantastic chair too. Kaizo, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you as well, Blair. I'm very excited. I'm always more excited after that intro. In fact, that absolutely bangs, and it's pretty early here in the NA, but that always is enough to get me up and get me going. So I'm very ready to be here. I'm very excited to be here.
Likewise, indeed. These two teams really looking to help make a name for themselves, especially as we're getting into the later stages of the sort of split. This is where you really start to get those. These are the top teams. These are the bottom teams. So every game, hell, even every single match in every set suddenly feels like it has just that little bit extra weight to it.
Yeah, and going into week 4, I mean, this is pretty much like you said, where teams are going to solidify themselves. Early on, it was kind of a question of who's going to get off to the hottest start, because we had to, figure out what the meta was going to be and who plays the best into it, what kind of characters we actually value. But now that that's all getting solidified and we're making those adaptations, this is sort of the step 2 of, okay, we figured out what's the meta, what's the answer to the meta right now. And that's kind of what teams are sort of playing around with as they go into this week 4 and starting to really solidify themselves as a top of the pack team, middle pack, bottom team. Very excited to see where these two teams end up at.
Agreed. And as you said, this is now the answer to the meta stage in picks and bans. And I am interested to see whether or not we'll see any of that adaptation come through as we go ahead and start our way into game 1's picks and bans here. We saw last night in the NA side of things, a lot of gods now kind of getting banned out of respect. And already here, Ecrom gets a respect ban with that Heimdallr.
Yeah, that's 100% not going to be a meta-centered ban there. I couldn't tell you the last time that anybody other than really Echrome looked good on this character or even picked it to begin with. Just not really something that you traditionally think of when you think of ADCs right now. It's a lot of the Ishtar, the Kurnanos, the Ram, the Jing Wei, the Marty Chorus maybe going in that long lane. Heim's a little bit more of a flavor pick, we'll say. Does things much differently than just about any of those other characters. A lot safer, but doesn't really have the best crit path right now, which is pretty much what these teams are going to be more than likely shifting their hunters towards. So that's 100% an Echrome specific ban there.
You mentioned Echrome specific. Same for Worstart on this Ao Kwong, picking up the entire team and winning them through their last set versus the Tartarus Titans. And a fantastic look. And ban-wise coming through, there are a lot of the good gods up there, but Varman is one of the ones left open. Things like Hercules and Yamoja also available. I wouldn't be surprised if Scarabs want to look that way, or maybe they've got some other picks in mind.
Yeah, Hercules, like you said, open, the Yamoja, the Terra, and the Serket, I think, are the directions I would maybe be looking toward. You can grab probably a tank and then the Serket, I would think, but it's actually the AMC for the Solar Scarabs, which is a very chaotic pick in my eyes, Blurt, because I see Vomit, I see Big Baby run at backliner, and I'm not sure that I want AMC to be that backliner. Granted, that is without the information of whether or not Vomit can actually catch up to an AMC right now. Is AMC fast enough to outrun the Big Baby once he gets angry? I think that they seem to have the answer, because otherwise that is a wild matchup to put yourself into.
Agreed, and all that tick damage just making it impossible to get the Big Baby out of the form. Now you've thrown a Nox and a Kurnanos on top of that. You are... Nox having a good time if you are the Solar Scarabs, but their Lance of Silence for Sidence with the Hades pickup.
And that's mostly to bully out this Vomit in lane, I would assume. Hades, obviously a mage, but one that we don't usually see in the mid lane, more than likely going to be solo lane, that going to Panvich, and it should be a pretty winning matchup against the Vomit. Not likely to be one where you get a lot of kills over there, just because Vomit can kind of get away from everything a Hades would want to do. But you can certainly bully him out, push the waves into tower, prevent him from being able to rotate as effectively just by inherently out-clearing him with the tools in the kit, and making it a little bit more delayed what he's actually going to be doing.
As we can see on the second phase of picks and bans, right now Wargs, knowing that this AMC is more often than not going to end up in the mid lane, they're looking at Hunter bans. And they will go ahead, though, and ban the Ram. The Cabrakan is a strange one to me, but again, feels like a targeted ban. On the other side, Hercules and Morgan Le Fay leaves over some of the more top pick options for the mid lane, and Solar Scarabs now. Can we just point out Aphrodite didn't get picked or banned in the top 12 gods and is now second phase picks here? How did that happen?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's probably where we're going to be seeing more Aphrodite. She did, now that we're on the 10.4 patch for this game, she saw some changes to the kit, a little bit of a change on the jealousy, where you don't share as many protections. It used to be 15% of your protections from items get shared with whoever you're linked to. Now that's only going to be 10%. So kind of scaling that back takes a little bit of the bite out of this character. Still very strong and still good into particular compositions, but I don't think any longer necessarily going to be a top pick. It's probably going to be a lot more second round. This is a composition Aphrodite would be good into. We pick it, not blindly we pick the Aphrodite and hope that it's
my goodness, talking about another one, Ishtar, last pick for the Solar Scarabs here, likely Echrome's option. And you mentioned who this Aphrodite feels like a good pickup with. I just like the idea of whoever she's linked to, it's of benefit. It's not like, oh, I have to link to the jungler because there are, go an initiator. If you need to go on AMC for safety, that's great. Safety for Ishtar. If Hades is just sat in the middle of a field ulting everyone, you can help keep them alive. And again, everyone knows Aphrodite Susano combo. Serket's not exactly a slouch in that regard either.
Yeah, just linking to one of these aggressive, high damage output, high CC junglers is usually what you want to do, at least in the middle and late game stages. Ideally, you want to keep your carries safe until that point, but once you get to the point where, you know, you have the items required to just outright kill somebody, which Serket does quite effectively, with crit being in the meta right now, I think it's usually going to be a better option to play aggressively, so look for Silence to likely be linking up with Worst Turtle and looking for trouble in the jungle.
Well, trouble in the jungle is what you're calling for here, but with picks and bans done, it is time to see how Game 1 is done. Niflheim, Wargs, and Solar Scarabs. Game number 1 coming to you, and it is going to be this Varman in the solo lane, as we didn't get to mention. Camazot's pick up here for Rapio.
And there was a little bit of flexibility there, you're right. I don't think that we brought that up on the desk, but both characters probably fine for either one of those two roles. I do think that Camazot's against Hades would have been much more volatile in the solo lane, as opposed to going against the Vahman, which is largely going to be clear focused. We'll see a little bit of something over here,
Freds just being a bit cheeky here, not necessarily invading, but more just wasting time. Though that said, the Invader's Curse has put them down to about half health. This does, however, give Davey all of that extra solo farm.
It does give Davey the solo farm, and it also makes the Solar Scarabs dual lane play differently than they would have liked. You can see that Silenced is level 1 here, which is usually not great for Aphrodite, considering you get all of the value from your kit when you can link to somebody else and then get additional value that way by essentially healing 2 players or getting 2 different instances of CC with the back off. Now she ticks over to 2, so it's not as relevant, but it does slow down a character whose level 2 is significantly better than the level 1. Plus, like you said, giving additional solo farm to Davey, kind of making them uncomfortable, asking them questions already. It's a bit of a different look than we usually see, but I don't think that anybody's necessarily significantly injured or benefited by that.
It always surprises me. I saw this yesterday with Promise going around and messing with the solo laner. I thought Invader's Curse meant that invades were completely gone. Is it just that beneficial to get your hunter that far ahead?
It's less that, and it's more supports, as always, still don't really need that farm early on, and slowing down any other role is always going to be worth it for you, as Davey actually takes a pretty significant amount of poke over here, Blur. But with Freds over here and playing so aggressively, looks like they might actually just be baiting out for a jungle rotation.
And that jungle rotation does come through from Rapio. Is spotted by Silence's wards, who had those available. So no gank, but Rapio more than comfortable enough taking this farm. And that's a good look so far for the Niflheim Wargs. But even so, it's the Solar Scarabs who have found themselves 300 extra gold in change just from more efficient farming, it seems.
More efficient farming, and don't forget the solo lane matchup is always going to be Panvitch just clearing the waves super hard and pushing it into Kana's tower and preventing him from getting full gold from that. It's likely to be the net worth favoring the Hades 9 times out of 10 in this matchup because, I mean, this is a lot of what we're going to see, at least until these characters get a little bit more items online, until Kana gets the Golden Blade, it can clear these waves more effectively. You are outright not going to outclear the Hades. So you do lose a bit of farm there, and it might be due to lose some more over here with this blue buff invade.
It's on the way. Rapio is over this side, but look at the rotational positioning he's gone for. He's going straight for the enemies instead. I like this call. They've recognized, hey, you're likely getting invaded, so if nothing else, we'll grab this one back. Worst Turtle jumps and finds it's already gone. So an unfortunate look. So Panvitch and Kana likely both go without a blue buff for now.
Yeah, they'll probably find their way to one of those blue buffs at some point, I would think, but that definitely does favor the Hades, I would say, more, because if somebody is going to get deprived of a blue buff, you would ideally like it to be a character that doesn't use a whole lot of mana. Something that has a lot of auto attack damage, like this Vahman, is going to be more favored in that. So the fact that both of them get a blue buff, even if it's the other person's blue buff and you get a little bit less farm for that, it's probably going to favor the Hades just because he needed a blue buff and he doesn't really care which one as long as he gets it.
Very true on that regard. And it's been a quiet but tentative early game for these two teams. Both of them sort of trying to encroach on enemy territory. We've seen invades now. Worst Turtle has invaded back camps, invaded the blue buff. Meanwhile, Niflheim Wargs, they've had Rapio shift towards the duo lane side of things. And is that sort of a hint at the idea of how these junglers want to be playing this matchup?
That's a good question, actually, Blur, and it's an answer that you're very welcome. It's an answer that we're not accustomed to hearing right now, and that's the fact that both of these teams actually likely can get involved pretty early on here as we see some shenanigans around the shield buff. A lot of team comps right now are just, we'll see you in 25 minutes when we're full build level 20. I don't think that that's really the pacing of the draft for either of these teams. Hades can fight pretty much from level 10, 12 onward. Serket and the Camazotz in the jungle are both very comfortable fighting pretty much from here on out. Like, they get one penetration item, one power item online. They're pretty much good to go for the rest of the game. Mid laners are at least middle game focused as opposed to the late game powerhouses, things like Merlin, Baba Yaga, stuff like that. We can realistically look to see some fighting pretty much as the Pyromancer spawns at about 11 minutes. I think that's likely to be the go button for either of these teams, especially the Solar Scarabs, who have so much shred on these objectives on account of having 2 ADCs and what's likely to be a crit jungler.
Ooh, blink from worst turtle, but Davey positions themselves nicely. Unfortunately, no such luck on the Cobra's Kiss to grab that one. But I think at this point, it's like you said, it's the major fights are going to happen around those objectives. Anything before that feels more like, can we get a pick? Can I burn your beads and come back?
Yeah, that's more extra credit or bonus as it might be. It's a lot more opportunity recognition as opposed to really inherent in the playstyles of either of these teams or in the characters that they drafted. I mean, you do have a pretty significant amount of crowd control coming out of the mid 3v3 of the Niflheim Wargs. Rapio lacks a lot in that regard, only having a slow really, but considering the fact that the CC from Agni Nox is so powerful, especially against something like a AMC that doesn't have a lot of tools to distance himself from that and kind of has to just rely on range to keep himself safe, it could be fairly volatile if they look to bring their attention there. But, I mean, the other side of that coin, Blur, is that Sap should be pretty well aware of that and know that if he's gonna be leaving tower, he's got to have vision of both of those sides and know where both of these characters are at so that he doesn't get crowd controlled, and also make sure that he's got at least one buddy nearby, ideally silenced to give him a little bit extra safety, some beads, some movement speed, and Aegis if he needs it. Aphrodite, pretty good for avoiding these early picks, at least when it comes to characters that traditionally lack the safety inherent in the kit.
Yeah, she reminds me a lot of sort of the old Kepri playstyle when he first came out, when people weren't playing him hyper-aggressive and dashing in to grab people. Sort of that, I sit in the back line, if you're in trouble, I ult you and you live, and the game, you know, the fight's over. So we'll have to see if that's how that playstyle is going to end up evolving. Item-wise, Sap in a lot of trouble. You called it. If he leaves tower, he needs support. He needs vision, and there is diddly squid on the map for him. There's just pings coming out saying, where was my team?
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Blur. He needs both of those things if he's going to be leaving the tower. And he had neither of them, and he just walks up to the halfway point. Like, if anything, the Wargs have all of the information around the mid. They've got the sentry ward control around that middle corridor on the left side. They've also got a bit of extra vision on the right. And the critical component of that fight, Blur, not only do they get the first blood bounty and shut down this AMC early on, that goes on to a Camazotz, who is traditionally a very snowbally character. He's only got damage to work with, but he's got a whole lot of it now that he's got that first blood available. And they also took the beads from the AMC in addition to killing him. So as safe as Sap needed to play previously, it's got to be even safer now, because just a stray Nauseous Fume stun from Gunter is enough to set up for a guaranteed combo from Preds. After which point, if this AMC is alive in a 1v1 or a 1v2 without silence to keep him alive, it is pretty much a misplay by the Niflheim Wargs.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he would be alive for much longer given his comp, and Unfortunately for the Solar Scarabs, they're going to have to think this one through. Luckily, though, it is only that 500 gold bounty that they find themselves down right now. A lot of positioning over onto this Gold Fury. Warding for Solar Scarabs is actually quite good at this point in time. Davey and Preds, though, are looking to try and step up, but seeing silenced around, they will back this one up. And it looks like we're going back to a little bit of farming. And in that process, I just want to mention, or ask your opinion on this. Ecrom opting here for this Death's Toll here. What's the thought process behind that one?
It makes it a lot easier to box the Kernanos in lane. Death's Toll isn't your ideal late game starter, and in fact, a lot of people will be selling that one, unless your name is Hydrogen, at which point you want Death's Temper so you can go Hydra's Lament Jing Wei with full damage and full crit. Otherwise, I know, you love that one. Otherwise, most ADCs are just going to be selling that one off, as we see some fireworks over here on the shield buff, but most ADCs will just sell that starter item, pick up like an oboe, or pick up a little bit of additional crit. The late game upgrades for it aren't exactly ideal for what a lot of ADCs want to do. You get Death's Embrace, which will give you a ton of healing, or you get Death's Temper, which gives you a bunch of power, but only if you've cleared something recently, which is very difficult to fight around these objectives with come late game level 20, Fire Giant Dance. It's not a whole lot for you to be clearing. So people will generally just sell that one off, whereas across the way, Davy's got the Hunter's Cowl upgrade, which is quite good. You know, movement speed when you're out of combat, giving you some additional attack speed in an aura when you're trying to do these objectives like the Pyromancer, Fire Giant, Gold Fury. It's a much better upgrade for you and kind of a bit more of an investment, whereas Death's Toll is just very good early.
Hell, I haven't even been messing around with the Leader's Cowl. You'd be surprised how nice that is on sieging there, but as we saw, Pyromancer is taken by the Niflheim Wargs. 10 minutes in, they were waiting for that to respawn. Gunter, bit lower than they'd like to be, but unfortunately, Solar Scarabs don't find an opportunity to look towards this Gold Fury. Instead, they're backing up and trying to get some more of those items online. It's a full Jotun's Wrath with SAP 7 finished off here, so a lot of cooldown here right now for this Amuzin Carb.
And the crazy thing to me, Blur, is now not only did they lose the first blood bounty, now they've also lost a neutral objective. And despite that fact, Scarabs are still down less than the first blood bounty. Like, I thought that it was just, you know, maybe some farm denied to tower in the solo lane by Panvich against Kana. That's not a great matchup early on. But they must be finding a lot of value elsewhere. And it seems to be coming largely around this duo side. They seem to be getting all of these shield buffs, which makes it much better lookable.
Well, Preds going for an invade, along with Idavy, not good, but Rapio's here to blink on through. The Blades of Retribution stun everyone out, so even though both get stunned out with the Polymorph, it is not going to matter, so everyone's just going to back this one out for fear of a rotation for the rest of the Scarabs. They're looking for it, but Sap can't get in range quick enough. So instead, they look like they want to start up this Gold Fury, and given the fact that they used so much to go for that invade, this Gold Fury looks pretty free.
Shard popped by the AMC, Sap will get a little bit of additional damage on this one, and it is just free. The first major objective going the way of the Solar Scarabs after, you know, the Wargs looked for some aggression in duo lane, but I don't know if that was like maybe they didn't have the timer correct there on the purple buff invade, but the Scarabs were just kind of okay. Like, they weren't bothered by the aggression. You get the ult forced out of silenced, and they just sort of back up there. It was a great Blades of Retribution, as you mentioned, to not only immune out a lot of the crowd control that was coming in from the Niflheim Wargs, but also deter them with a bit of damage and a bit of stun there. Rapio didn't want to burn the ult to have to banish himself out of that, because that's his main safety tool, as well as his main dive tool if he needed to finish off those kills. Because of that, they kind of just didn't meet the damage check required to get either one of those kills. And the fact that, you know, Gunter wasn't there to help out or even prevent them from doing the Gold Fury, a little bit surprising to me there. But either way, puts the Scarabs in a pretty good spot.
Chrome trying to take a 1v1, but there's no such thing as a 1v1 in the duo lane. Rapio over this side, trying to see if they can't find a cheeky pick, but alas, they will not. So even though we're 12 minutes in and fights have happened, it's still only 1-0. And I gotta imagine that that's just very good play from the Scarabs to be that defensive and still finding wins.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be fine for them come late game as well. As I mentioned earlier, both of these teams get their tools online pretty early. They have a lot of toys to play with right about now is where a lot of these power spikes are going to happen. Nobody's feeling too bad come late game.
Oh, Echrome jolts themselves back into the Wild Hunt. Almost ends up falling here. Rapio's pinged out on the wards, and no blink option available for them yet. Worst Turtle keeping them away as Echrome gets right the way back here. Silence, Sap, and Worst Turtle all on that rotation here. And that was Echrome who started that fight. And now Preds, though, they're up high looking for kills if they can. Echrome will have to sustain under tower as the 3v4 ends up breaking out over a purple buff for now.
Purple buff for it. Purple buff will go down there, it looks like, in favor of the Wargs, and I'll put a question mark on that one, kind of unsure, but
Someone
does look like they... Yeah, somebody ended up with that. The main point is no fight just yet.
Oh, there's a big fight now. Gunter beats and brings Worst Turtle into the tower. And unfortunately, that means Silence can't stay tethered to them. Gunter ends up about 30% health, but it's Silenced who's currently 3v1. Sap7's here and throwing out damage, but everyone's ignoring him. Great stun, shuts the rest of that down, and Rapio finds Silenced on the back side of it. Meanwhile, Carter's rotation forces out Worst Turtle, and now they're looking for Sap7 under tower. Just respected damage too much.
Sandwich is here on rotation. Blink Hades ult!
This could be big. Davies doesn't have beads, and so he'll get pulled back in. Worst Turtle sticks around, cleans up the kill, and will happily thank Pamvich for that one, leaving this as a very long and overly extended 1v1 over a purple buff?
Question mark? I mean, we still don't even know who got the purple buff, and that feels like the only thing we were really fighting over to begin with, Blur, because no Gold Fury up, tower not really looked at there. You could call it a green buff invade, maybe, because Gunter was technically doing that once we saw that fighting really break out in the mid lane, but you said it pretty well yourself, Blair. Once you lose the tether there for Silence hooked up to Worst Turtle, it's not a great idea for you to continue diving that one, so it's lucky that Worst Turtle ends up making it out of there. And much more critically, that puts Silenced in such a weird spot. Because once you're tethered to the circuit and you're diving there, you feel very powerful. You're like, oh, this is where I need to be. I'm positioned here very aggressively to help my jungler. And then the jungler leaves, and then you're just an Aphrodite support standing in the enemy green buff pit. And they get punished very promptly by the Wargs. And despite that fact, it's now the Scarabs looking for another neutral objective.
And no one right now around for it. Pyromancer was being looked at by the Niflheim Wargs. And this time they get what they wanted here. Out comes the Wild Hunt.
Nice.
Last breath. CC immunity is good. Kiss back through. They're going to invest a lot into Davey.
Nice.
And they will get it, but it's Silence credited for the kill. And they will get this tier 1 tower as well. Meanwhile, the rest of Niflheim Wargs kind of just feel like they've got to push mid, but can't.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot for them to do, but I have to talk about how excellently played that was from Worst Turtle. Like, they get the kill, but hang on, we might not get to talk about it.
We might not, as Pamvich is under some aggression here, goes into the ultimate, and eats many ultimates in return. The sustain will help a little bit, but unfortunately this Hades doesn't quite have enough sustain in the kit to deal with Okana on that massive ultimate from the Verman. As a result, they will fall. We may see the turnaround of a solo tier 1 tower, but like you mentioned, you wanted to mention the plays around from that on Davey?
Yeah, it feels less relevant now that we just saw somebody get smothered in right lane, but just the fact that Worst Turtle dashes in there, uses the Circuit Last Breath ultimate to immune out the Wild Hunt coming in from Davey, and then not only that, waits until the very last moment when Davey was about to walk around the wall to make sure he gets maximum Cobra's Kiss value directly into the crowd control chain coming from the Blades of Retribution from Echrome. Just fantastically played. And it's unlikely that Davey lives there regardless, but when it's that flashy and played that well, I still feel the need to point it out.
Rightly so at this point as 3-2, but it's a footnote of a lead right now. Echrome might be fighting a 2v1 situation. They will back up immediately.
Okay.
Wild Hunt with the Heartseeker damage from Rapio just blows them out of the water.
And now the rotation's coming in from the Scarabs. Silenced and Worst Turtle are here.
They are here, but it's still a 3v2. They don't feel comfortable trying to push this one out, so instead they're just here to defend the tower. But there's still a minion wave here, and I'm not surprised if they would whack this one up. So now, I think this is the first time we might see Niflheim Wargs taking some of that initiation or initiative from picking people off to seeing if they can transition that elsewhere, but there's no major objective up for them.
Yeah, Gold Fury's still down for a bit. They already got the Pyromancer that kind of went down in trade pretty much for the last time that we saw the Gold Fury get done, so it's not the best spot for them to be, but they are at least continuing to pile on the pressure. They've seen a lot more aggression in their favor so far this game, and it can be kind of discouraging if you're the ones asking the questions, if you're on the front foot the whole game and you don't see any return for it. A lot of teams will take that as maybe we're doing something wrong, we need to stop what we're doing, but they clearly understand it's going well and we're doing things right. We just need to make the adaptation after we get the aggressive play made. And they're continuing to lay that on here and really ask questions of this mid 3v3 more often than not, because Sap is more than likely the best target for your aggression here. The AMC, very safe just because he's got a tower there. But we're 19 minutes in, Blur. There's only so much longer that tower is going to keep him safe. And then that exclusive right goes to the Aphrodite player, where Silence is going to be tasked with keeping this guy alive. And when the dive is coming in from Rapio and you can't really peel a Camazotz, like he just goes in the air and there's not a whole lot you can do about it, it's going to be even more difficult to keep Sap alive. Granted, at least for the time being, things have been working pretty well for the Scarabs. They've kept him pretty safe. Gonna have to continue to do that moving forward.
Pamvich eats the 1v1 to Kana, who has found themselves a 3-level lead here in this solo lane. The Hades just not tanky enough to survive that, and this right now leads Niflheim Wargs to going for another look for an invade. Rapio doing big work onto E-Chrome. That damage! One basic attack to the back of the head. It's all that is needed to follow through. And now, look at the timing. This is what they needed to do. This is that adaptation you wanted to see. Straight to the Oni Fury.
Yeah, this is that stuff after the stuff that F. always talked about. This is you get the kill and now you gotta do something. Because the power play is nice, but it's only a power play if you make something of it. And the Wargs finally, with their 5-0 jungler, getting a successful kill on left lane, and their 3-level lead, level 20 solo laner, getting a successful kill on right lane, finally transition that into something meaningful like the Gold Fury. Now they're actually just looking at just ripping this Fire Giant Blur.
They are. Preds is keeping too busy right now, and Connor's more than comfortable with it, but at this point in time, there is a little bit of damage going the way of Preds, courtesy of Sunder.
Nice.
But hey, support for Fire Giant. How many times are you going to hear everyone exclaim, this is perfect? Supports are more than happy enough to do this, right?
Yeah, supports kill themselves for nothing, so getting an objective in addition to that is just icing on top of the cake. Now it's going to be the Wargs trying to defend this tower siege, and Kana is fully by himself.
Kana is 1v5 at this point in time. There's no Saket ult, so they don't feel too dissuaded to keep going, but damage output is good enough where Connor doesn't want to throw themselves away. They ain't any support, so rightly so, they back up from that one. But now the question is, how are Solar Scarabs going to deal with this Fire Giant team?
They're gonna have to defend on T2s, if that. I mean, you would ideally like to keep all of your towers up when you have this small of a lead to work with, or I guess in their perspective, it's a bit of a deficit to work with. 2K is nothing at this stage of the game. We're talking like a tier 1 or tier 2 of an item here or there. But if it was a couple thousand more gold, then you give them up. It's the fact that letting them sweep all these towers, getting 1,200, 1,500, whatever it is for each of these tier 2 towers onto the Niflheim Wargs, eventually that starts to add up, and if you let this lead balloon from 2,000 gold up to 6,000 gold, 7,000 gold from this power play of the Fire Giant, then your defense becomes much more difficult. So the fact that they're giving up the tier 1 isn't that big of a deal, but you'd ideally like to see them try to cling to these T2s. Only problem being, you're a little bit behind at this point in some pretty relevant roles. Overall, it's not a big deal. It's not a huge lead to be working with, but the fact that it is a lot of lead in a very small amount of places as opposed to a small amount of lead in a lot of places makes it a much more difficult one to fight into.
I definitely agree, and look at what we're seeing here. This means that Rapio and iDavy feel comfortable just pushing up on the left side. Meanwhile, everyone else keeps mid lane busy in a 3v4 plus situation from the Solar Scarabs. And what we're seeing now is how these itemizations are coming online. SAP 7 is full pen. They are in a great spot to blow anyone up, but no one can provide them the space to do that.
Yeah, good luck providing space against this Vomnin, man. And that's kind of the thing I was worried about is, in theory, Blur, if you link an AMC to an Aphrodite, that's a whole lot of movement speed to get you away from one very angry baby. But if Kana can successfully land even a single auto attack onto SAP 7 after getting the ult, you're dead. You're just dead. There is nothing that can be done to peel for you. We've seen Worst Turtle get absolutely bonked on the noggin by a Vomit in a previous set of the Solar Scarabs, and you gotta prevent Sap from having that done to him now.
Oh, Worst Turtle does manage to get away in the tankiest Kep build here. He's going to go forward with Panvich on the blink. No such luck finding much here. Now they're looking at Rapio, but Gunter, some great Agni Bombs rain down and dissuade everyone from going forward. Now Rapio gets to return back into this fight from behind.
Oh, it's huge! It's huge!
Use that bat out of hell, but can't find any final shots. The rest of the team here is to back up and help him go in, but at this point in time, the tier 2 tower stands and Fire Giant's off of them. So that Fire Giant didn't really seem to amount to much.
No.
But they have set themselves up for the next one.
Kind of. I mean, I wouldn't even venture that far, Blur. Like, a 2,000 gold transferring to a, 4,000 gold lead? It's not a whole lot. They get the tier 2 tower left, they get the tier 1 in mid, which is pretty important, not only for the gold, but also to open up the space. I think tier 1 mid is a very undervalued objective for a lot of these teams, just because it takes away the safety of your backliners to be able to have a structure to stand under and feel a little bit safer. Whereas, you know, if you take the tier 1 and left, that's not really around an objective, doesn't give you a whole lot of value. It's really just the gold you're looking for there. I think that they opened up the map pretty well and provided themselves some space to work with, but didn't really develop their lead a whole lot. It's a largely similar position, at least gold-wise, to where they were at previously. Only difference being that now, with a little bit more time passage, it's been a lot more level 20s ticked over for the Solar Scarabs. They don't quite have all of the starter items online yet, but the fact that they're now available to do them makes it a bit scarier for the Wargs to fight into. Granted, they don't seem particularly deterred by that, or perturbed in any way is the word I was looking for, but despite that fact, the Scarabs are hanging around, man. If they do this Fire Giant, the Scarabs are going to know about it.
They certainly will. And interesting point I want to ask you about this Hades build. We used to see when Hades first started coming in last season, it was lifesteal into a physical defense, magical defense, and you just lived. Now, though, we're seeing it takes so long to start getting these defense items online, and it's just a Stone of Binding. I don't think this Hades can frontline at all.
No, he is not supposed to be a conventional frontliner, not the same way that Kana is. He pretty much wants to go in and blow somebody up and then ideally live. And it's ideally not mandatory.
Well, we'll see whether or not he ideally gets to do so as Niflheim Wargs start
Sap.
charging through. Great two-man stun. Sap is under duress the entire time. He's the only threat, the only problem. And the first one to fall. Connor will back it away. This Hades ult comes through and pulls in the big members. Gunter does end up falling here, so it is a 1-for-2 trade out right now. The rest of Niflheim Wargs are more than happy to stick around. Look at Rapio healing up, using those blood pools as Preds finds themselves in trouble, but dashes on through. Davey switches places with them, and Panvich is back on through, but it's a 3v4, and the Niflheim Wargs are just hunting them down.
Trying to dive this tower, but won't be able to find the damage. Blur Silence lives with what has to be double-digit HP at best on this Aphrodite. So at the end of the day, after a pretty violent and spectacular team fight, only 3 total players dying, and 2 of them being on one team, 1 on the other, means that nobody can do the Fire Giant on the back end of that fight. It was not won decisively enough by either team. That comes a lot from the fact that both solo laners kind of got the value they needed there. Panvich successfully pulls in Gunter with that Pillar of Agony. You saw Kana just outright diving through, you know, tier 2 tower, 3 people, Aphrodite ult, Aegis, all of the tools for the Solar Scarabs, and Kana just continued to move forward and successfully got that kill. And a good hover here from production to draw some attention to this Midgardian male. How in the hell are you killing this Vahman as a double ADC composition if you have slower attack speed when you hit him? He's already tanky. He already does 1 billion damage, and he already catches up with you and sticks to you. And now he slows your movement speed and your attack speed just for trying to keep yourself alive. It's yucky. It's frankly yucky is the word that I would use for it.
I mean, that's the word you can use while on air, so we'll go with yucky for now. My only thoughts is Sunder, but as it stands, let's see whether or not Solar Scarabs can pick up this fight a bit better. Okana and Rapio immediately baiting out as much damage as they can from Sap 7. Worst Turtle went in to go aggressive, but can't find much. Now it's up to Preds, who again finds a huge Pillar of Agony, pulling multiple members back forward. It's Davey this time who ends up falling. Panvich and Worst Turtle will be able to get back to base to heal this one up. So it's a singular pick onto iDavey. Scarabs have found a small window here.
And they're going to pull this Fire Giant here, at least incidentally. I don't know if that was necessarily on purpose, but still got some fairly low health bars here. I think that when the Wargs step up, it's going to be a bit more trepidatious, but they're sticking to it, Blur.
They are. Silence gets rooted out in place and finds himself under half, but Panvich and Worst Turtle are looping around. They're trying to pull members into the pit. Gunter gets blinked on and he's aggressed on, and they've taken the Niflheim Wargs playbook, and they've taken the Fire Giant for them. Preds now finds themselves on the barest of HPs and left all alone. They will pick up another member. They are drip feeding the kills here. 3 may be dead, but iDavey will be back up soon. Rapio and Kana doing what they can just to dissuade much aggression in the mid lane.
And Worst Turtle is my MVP of that fight. It looked flashier with Panvich being the one to get the kill there, but it's Worst Turtle going in, forcing all of the safety tools out from the backline of the Niflheim Wargs, and living through that engagement as a result of the fact that he's basically a tank in the jungle on this Circuit, is the only reason that the Solar Scarabs end up taking that fight as convincingly as they did. He goes in, he gets full value onto the backline of the Niflheim Wargs, face tanks for what honestly felt like too long, considering the fact that he was largely by himself. And then after applying the last breath, after taking the movement abilities, after attracting all of that attention, only then does Panvich go in and then reap the benefits that's been set up for him by his jungler. And that's kind of the way this composition has to work. Because you don't have a conventional solo laner, because your only real frontliner otherwise is an Aphrodite who doesn't have the best engage, it kind of has to be your jungler that starts off these fights. And if Worst Turtle's a full damage build, if he's got crit in the build, he's very unlikely to live through doing something like that. That's why we see him transition into this pseudo, like, half tanky, 1.5 tank on this composition kind of build that he's got. He has to be the one to, we call it entry frag in an FPS, where you go in, you recognize, I might die for this, but it is my job to get this started. And Worst Turtle did a fantastic job there, taking the resources, setting up for the rest of the Scarabs to move forward. And now the Fire Giant being on them is the first time that we'll see the Scarabs really look to play aggressively in this set.
And aggressively, as it stands, they are in a situation where Kana is knocking on a Phoenix door. Echrome has back to go ahead and set this one up, but we just saw there, notice how quickly that tower fell. This penetration build coming through from Echrome, rounding out now, like you said, they're going to sell that Death's Toll. They've grabbed themselves the Wind Demon here. And with this gold in hand, look at all these items getting finished off. Serrated Edge for Worst Turtle, Heartseeker for Sap 7. This is critical mass for the Solar Scarabs. Hell, even Ice Silenced is almost 6-slotted.
Feels good, man. I mean, okay, let's call a spade here, Blur. My man's got the cheapest support build I've ever seen in my entire life. His most expensive item in that build, if I'm not mistaken, is Gauntlet of Thieves, which is $23.50. So it's not like he's living bougie or anything like that. It's just all of his items happen to be very cheap, and they happen to be coming online at a very critical point in this game. Fire Giant falling off of everybody on the Solar Scarabs, but they had another couple of seconds on that. You can bet your sweet bippy that they were going to get their way into that left Phoenix, but instead just going to, I don't know, man. Don't ask.
Was that an Eddie reference?
No, I don't think so. I frankly have no idea where that came from. I was going to say something much different, but decided that it was probably not the best idea. But it is the best idea for the Scarabs to back up there, I think, and reset for this Fire Giant. It always feels bad if you take the Oni Fury Blur and then you can't really push with the waves, but it at least makes somebody come over here to this left lane. You can see Kana dealing with the wave, and that gives the Scarabs all the time in the world to set up around what is about to be an enhanced Fire Giant in 10 seconds. Kana gets the back off and will be able to walk in, but despite the fact that it'll be here on time for the defense, it's more important that the Scarabs get their ideal setup here, and Worst Turtle gets to crouch here in the jungle invisible.
Oh, and they're going to walk right in. Preds is the one who ends up walking too close, and just look at how quickly they end up falling. Great work from this, forces Kana as well, and that to me signals Niflheim Wargs saying, nope, that's yours, you take it. Rapio is standing up here, looking to try and poke out Sap 7, but I don't think you can win that poke war at this point in time, and the Fire Giant is just being evaporated at this point in time. Everyone on Niflheim Wargs just kind of feels dumbfounded after that engagement.
I'm dumbfounded too, bro. That was crazy. Like, I didn't think that they could just outright one-shot Preds like that. But with the combined damage of the true damage from the Last Breath and the Stinger, it made it look pretty easy to bring him down.
Look at how quickly that Phoenix is gone without their major CC or frontline. No one on the Wargs feels comfortable trying to step up. The mid Phoenix is respawned, but everyone from Solar Scarabs is already making their way over here.
And they're going to set up for this middle Phoenix siege, and Echrome takes a huge amount of damage there. But considering he's got the lifesteal in the kit, he's got the Aphrodite attached to him, enhanced Fire Giant also going to give him a bit of sustain. It should be a stall as opposed to a reset here as the Solar Scarabs back up and try to find my man something to heal off if he's already back to full HP. Middle Phoenix still on its last legs, essentially. Fire Waves starting to pour down the right side. It's going to be the Solar Scarabs probably moving their way to the left lane here and grabbing that wave. Worst Turtle should ideally go get that one, but, you know, Enhanced Fire Giant removes some of those backdoor protections, so don't necessarily need it. It'd be nice to have the minions, but not mandatory for this siege by any stretch of the imagination. Scarabs have a bit of time to work with here, Blur. They got the wave on right, they got the wave stalled out on left. They don't have to breach the base here, but if somebody blinks from the Wargs, then it would be the time to go in.
Agreed, girl. Like what you said, it's Worst Turtle who needs to start these initiations, and they're going to go on a Pred to put as much damage as they can into the backside. Meanwhile, Rapio and Kana, they're looking into the backline. They found Echrome with some huge amounts of damage, but the Aphrodite Kiss buys a little more time. It's still not enough. Echrome ends up falling. Rapio credited with the kill, and now Gunter's found Panvich. Where was that happening in this engagement?
Phoenix, I guess. I mean, we didn't even get to see what Panvich did. My man didn't even get to ult in that fight. You can see the beads are down there, so obviously was trying to peel for himself and not really voluntary that he ends up going down there. But a hell of an engage from the Wargs there, man. It looked like the Scarabs had their number in that last fight around the Fire Giant pit, but they just overstepped straight up on the left Phoenix. I mean, they tried to just burst down a member of the Niflheim Wargs. You can see Worst Turtle going for that entry frag again, trying to get the last breath onto somebody and using that as the way to start the fight, but that makes their backline step too far forward. Everybody's got to back up and collapse on the dive from the Niflheim Wargs, and Khan and Rapio kind of got it done.
Absolutely huge. Credit to Preds as well, surviving through the initial focus. Now, trying to lead everyone in towards this mid-Phoenix. Worst Turtle goes forward and does get the Cobra's Kiss onto Davey, and that will dissuade everyone else from chasing. A good three-man stun from Gunter. All but finishes that, but the Highlands isn't letting this one go for free. Neither is Sap 7. They're going to chase them the entire length down the mid lane if they need to, just to get everyone back up on this side of things. And I feel like, going back to a point you made earlier, it's Worst Turtle who needs to start these engagements.
Yes.
So it's whoever Worst Turtle can blink and immediately find. And the first time it was Preds, great, everyone could find it because he was all alone. On that Phoenix, though, a bit more concerning. It needs to be the right target. Preds lived that fight, even after all the focus.
I think that maybe more important than the right target, Blur, is right place, right time. And that just didn't feel like it for me under that Phoenix siege, because the initial engage was deep enough into that Phoenix. Not super deep, not like they were diving into the fountain or anything, but far enough forward that the backline to follow up had to be on the Phoenix line. And that makes them easy pickings for the blinks in from not only Kana on this Vaughn, but also Rapio getting an excellent engage off onto the backline. And Silent's job is keeping Sap alive, which pretty much means that if Echrome can't fend for himself, my man's kind of just left to the wolves. So he ends up dying there. Panvich has to zone everybody else so that they can't help out the dive. Not great. Have to be an adaptation here around the Fire Giant.
Preds again, the first one forward, and needs a little bit of CC. Thankfully, the rest of the Wargs are here. I'm a little upset that you didn't say left to the Wargs instead of the Wolves, but you know, live review notes. That's do that next time. That's for next time. For now, though, we've still got this first Fire Giant being looked at here. The Phoenix has respawned for the Niflheim Wargs, though, and that's a big one for them. They've stalled this game out towards parity, and as you can see here, Preds, the only one left with items to build, and they're going a little bit offensive with it. I wouldn't be surprised if that isn't a Divine Rune for more anti-heal, but now the question is how do they go forward? It's a big stun to start it, but Scarabs are just holding their ground.
Wow, that was Beads and Aegis forced off of Echrome there. That's why the Scarabs are backing up despite having all their health bars still full. They have no safety tools for the backline.
Preds, where is your health bar, my friends? Where's Davy's health bar? Where's Rapio's health bar? Panvich goes back in, and a beautiful Pillar of Agony pulls everyone back towards. It's a 2-for-1 situation. Kana finally gets dealt with here. You wanted to know how you deal with it as two hunters? Just keep swinging. That's the only thing they can do. And now it's just Rapio and Gunter left. Gunter the only one with a health bar to step up. Needs a Sunder, and that alone could cause some trouble for them. They're going to have to back away from this one quicker than I think they'd have liked. Panvich, though, ends up taking a bomb or two. Fire Giant ends up falling again. 4 members from Solar Scarabs with it. It's still only 2 up for the next 30 seconds.
And it looks so easy for them, Blur, if Preds just walks in and kills himself at the beginning of that engagement. Having to take that fight without 80% of the enemy support's health bar makes that very simple. Now they still got 3 down for what looks like an end call.
Let's see if they go for it. Panvich, focused right now by Gunter, and Gunter will Aegis out a little bit. Damage is coming through. They need to find a way to CC these members out, but it's just not enough. The damage is there, and the damage is done. 11 to 11, 40-40 on the clock. Scarabs, though, anything but even in this game, will take game 1.
Yeah, and they played so patient, Blur. Like, they just didn't do anything because they didn't need to for the first 20 minutes or so of that game. It wasn't really until they got that first Fire Giant that we really got to see them play aggressively. The rest of the time, it was kind of the Wargs asking all the questions, but they didn't get a whole lot of the stuff after the stuff. I asked very specifically for that adaptation at about the 15-minute mark where they finally got that good fight. They got the pick and right, they got the pick and left, then they got the Gold Fury, and it looked like everything was going well. But that was really the only time that game that we saw the Wargs take a good fight, take a positive fight, and then end up getting something on the back end of it. The rest of the time, it was just getting a kill and then kind of resetting. I mean, Rapio didn't even die in that game, Blur. He went 6-0-3 on this Camazotz, but it just doesn't matter if you're not finding the investment on the back end of these fights. Not being able to collect off of the effort that you put in makes it so difficult to win these games against a very patient Solar Scarabs team.
I absolutely loved seeing this play coming out from them as well. It's that the adaptation of Worst Turtle's early game of being, all right, I'm here to set up kills, I'm here to look for pressure, into Panvich is going full damage. I need to be the, quote, solo laner and initiate these engagements. Yes. They back it up and play it so well. And if you look at the scoreline, it's like, oh my God, Rapio's 6-0-3. They're amazing. They just run away with the game. No. Those kills came early. Those kills didn't matter when it came to these sieges. Those kills didn't amount to much. And in those last engagements, he couldn't join Kana in the back line.
Yeah, it was just too deep and it took too long. Camazotz is a burst character where, you'd like to dump all your damage and then be done with it, but they kept the backline alive for long enough with the Aphrodite double hunter composition that he just couldn't get in there. There were so many other fires to put out, not to mention that fact that he didn't really get the chance to dive. Worst Turtle picked up the mantle as pseudo solo laner, kind of wore it quite well.
I gotta agree with you, and I wonder whether or not we'll see any of that adaptation brought in Game 2 for the Wargs, whether it's in picks, whether it's in bans. We'll have to find that out in Game 2. But first, we'll throw it to a quick break. After getting a 7th pick, Aphrodite, into a 10th pick, Ishtar here, Solar Scarabs able to go ahead in a long game, 40 minutes on that side of things, but they still come away with the win versus the Niflheim Wargs, and now we get to go all the way back to the -1 on the clock here, and game 2, Niflheim Wargs looking to try and change things up. Where do they even look to start with that, Kaizo?
I'd actually like to see some attention paid to the support. And I know that people are pretty high on Nox support right now. That's kind of a favorite pick of a lot of these teams, as well as a lot of the fans at home watching. I do think that it has a place, but the thing is, if you're not playing a traditional Guardian, you're not going to be as safe as a traditional Guardian. And it felt like a lot of the times those fights broke out in favor of the Solar Scarabs off the back of Preds either being picked or being too far out of position. I can think specifically about the one time that they just set up an ambush on him and one-shot him. I don't think that a Guardian really helps you there. But if you're going to be walking into the enemy team and taking 80% of your health by a rounded enhanced fire giant fight, I'd ideally like you to take less damage than that, Blair.
Yeah, or, you know, have 80% be a bigger number in total, so that 20% might be able to matter a little more. It's a difficult one, especially when you value that so highly and you get off to such a great start, but we'll have to see what adjustments are made here in picks and bans. For game number 2, already Wargs are going to be going back towards that first ban, or first pick side of things. Whether or not the bans change up, well, that answers my question immediately. Hades taken off the table.
And call me crazy, Blur. I don't know that... Okay, thank you. I don't know that the Hades is a ban for Panvich. I think that's a ban for Worst Turtle. Because if Panvich isn't on Hades, Worst Turtle isn't playing that initiation frontline style of character. Okay, well, if they're going to ban this, that is very decidedly a ban for Worst Turtle. So I'll eat my words then. I wanted to sound so smart. I thought that was going to sound so cool if I was like, oh, you know, they banned the character that Panvich played, but it's actually a ban. Okay, I'll just stop talking, man. You go ahead.
Yeah, well, so yeah, the ban phase, Wargs, I mentioned game 1, how a lot of it felt like now we're at target ban phases here. We are going to still see the Guan Yu taken off the table, but Solar Scarabs haven't changed up their bans here. Does that mean the Wargs don't need to change up their picks here?
It means that a lot more is going to be left on the table. We had the Hercules, the Vahman, now the Vahman again for Kana. And that is pretty much the same position we were in previously, except this time around, no Circuit available for the Solar Scarabs. And again, it's the situation we had before, where you can take the Hercules here, you can take the Ishtar here, you can take a support and then one of those tanks or one of those backliners. The Aphrodite, again, is an interesting one for Silence, especially considering the fact that they're picking it very early here, as opposed to as late in the draft as they did previously. Going back to this AMC, that seems to be their bread and butter combo in that composition is keep the AMC alive so that he can deal the damage to the enemy team.
And to be fair, aside from the misstep at First Blood where he got collapsed by 3 people, I don't really see any issue with going back to it. The Aphrodite pickup early does feel like they were concerned Wargs may have taken it, but now it's a wrong pickup here. This was banned away last game, and Rapio's going to go back to the Camazots. I'm a little concerned that Wargs are kind of almost salty run backing this.
Yeah, that tells me that the Wargs are actually still very comfortable with the way that game went, and they think that there were just a couple of things that needed to be adapted. So, taking away the Hades and the Circuit takes away a very specific playstyle that the Scarabs were going for. And as you can see already, the adaptation from the Scarabs, they pick a much more traditional solo laner, which gives a much different look for this Wargs draft. So that tells me the Wargs didn't think their draft was the problem. They thought their draft was good. They liked that combo. They've clearly worked with that in the past, and it's worked well for them. So they'll go back to it here, make the Scarabs play something different, and then hope for a different lineup.
Well, hopefully they will go ahead and try and fix some of that in the second phase of ban. Solar Scarabs take away the Terra and Umoja, who... Notably, I think these are the two that when we think, what would we like to see Preds on instead of the Nox? these feel like two good options. The Wargs now for their last ban, they will go ahead and take away Nemesis here. Yeah, you're making that same heart noise, because why Nemesis?
Well, Nemesis is very specifically to help blow up the Vomit, which would be an issue. I mean, if you're getting Nem ulted and AMC ulted, I don't care what character you're playing, you're dying. Just full stop. You are dead for receiving those cooldowns. So I think that it's probably just to keep Kana a little bit safer, but I don't know. I think Nemesis much better into Cthulhu than it is into Vomit. I think Vomit could maybe still be able to dive through that. Maybe not with the Aphrodite. I don't know. It's a weird ban for sure, but if that's something where Kana's like, I don't feel comfortable playing against this character, there's absolutely no reason not to take it off the table.
All right, well, let's have a look at some life of the party here with Baron Samedi. That is going to be Pred's change-up here, so a little bit more overall team-wide CC and a little bit of sustain to go along with it, but I'm concerned. Before this CC from Nox was so big and so important, now this team feels kind of light on CC.
It's a little light, but it's very impactful crowd control that comes out of the Baron, specifically in this draft. The root not being a hard crowd control, meaning you can just dash out of it, you can jump out of it, sounds good on paper, but look at what the Scarabs have. They got Aphrodite, no movement inherent in the kit, and AMC, no movement inherent in the kit. And even now this Hebo, if any of those three characters get rooted by this Baron, they've got to use a pretty valuable cooldown to get out of that situation and get themselves to safety. The Baron's actually, in my eyes, a pretty good pick here to help kind of bully this Aphrodite AMC and make sure that they are not as safe as they were previously. If you can force out that Undying Love on a Baron route and then not have that available for when Rapio's diving on the Camazotz or when Kana's diving on the Vomit, that's a much better setup to that fight than you had previously, where you can use all of those tools just to keep SAP 7 alive on this AMC.
Let's hope that that is the case here. Solar Scarabs go back to their tried and true, protect the Amusin Carbs, and Wargs looking to try and change things up a bit. Still got their plan in mind. Let's see if they can bring us to a game 3 here as the Wargs face off against the Scarabs in game 2.
I do think that they've given themselves better tools to use against the composition that's been drafted for the Solar Scarabs. I don't think that Nox is a bad pick against the draft that the Scarabs had, but I think that it's a little bit safer with Preds on this Baron support. And he's going for this again, Blur. He's doing it one more time.
Damn it, we need to buff the Invader's Curse. You can't be doing this. I mean, he's not going to kill any of this. He's just standing here, taking the damage. He's not even got the heal. Yeah, okay, he is dying. That is the big one to note. But again, like you said, it's just wasting time. And that was what this invade used to do, and that's what it's doing again. He stole away one of them!
And Echrome is also dying, because Silenced has to protect the purple buff, which means that Echrome needs to be soloing everything as opposed to getting the help from the support. He's got a shot, man.
He's actually going to steal this. He doesn't get it, thankfully. Invader's Curse now wearing off from them, but look how late into lane they are. In fact, actually, they're going for a fight. They're going to body block. Echrome in, Beads, and Shelly's forced. Davey rolls through. That's disgusting.
And it's even better against the dual lane that the Scarabs have, because Aphrodite is not going to punish you level 1 for doing that, and Echrome on the Chernabog has no ability to clear a camp by himself. He has some of the worst ADC clear in the game for dealing with those buffs level 1. So he takes so much damage as only level 1 has no movement when he walks into lane, versus Davey, who did have the movement available and could punish him as he walked in. And now they get to freeze this wave at the halfway point and force the rotation from Worst Turtle. This is a very dire spot for the Solar Scarabs.
Davey's level 3 at this point in time. Only one who's really a threat to him is Worst Turtle, and Rapio's already dealing with that one. Out comes the Horn Shards, though. Looking to try and chase this down. Worst Turtle, the body blocks again around this corner. Rapio finds a second pick. Niflheim Wargs. They are not happy about last game.
What kind of fever dream is the beginning of this game, man? We've seen 2 almost unheard of kills early on. And Davey's letting them know, man, it's getting silly, and sometimes you just gotta appreciate how bizarre it is that you got the start to this game the way that you did. They're now 1,000 gold up at 2 minutes into the game, Blur. When was the last time you've seen a 500 gold per minute lead on a team, especially this early in? This is an incredible position for the Wargs to be in. And the thing is, it doesn't get any easier for the Scarabs. As long as Rapio is here on the left side of the map once his purple buff respawns, it is near impossible for the Scarabs to secure this farm. But it looks like instead Rapio is going to lend his attention to the right-hand side of the map, try to invade this blue buff.
They're looking for it. It doesn't look like they are going to be able to go ahead and grab it. Panvich will be able to grab this one as solo lane. For once, actually gets left as a solo lane for a while. And you mentioned Hades has a good matchup into the Vermont last game. Does the Cthulhu hold any decent sway and wave clear?
At least for the first couple of levels, I'd probably give it to Cthulhu, just because the Vahman relies so heavily on those auto attacks from the Golden Blade to actually be able to clear, whereas Cthulhu, he's a Guardian. All of his base damage is very, very good, whereas a Warrior has to be kind of balanced around the fact that if they do too much damage, they'd be too much of a menace. I'm looking at you, King Arthur. Don't think we forgot about you, even though you're not here. It's really things like the Cthulhu that will feel very good for the first several levels, and then fall off, and then you don't see them again and feeling very impactful until basically full build level 20. If you can remember all the way back to when things like the Jing 10 solo, the Sobek solo were in the meta, it was a lot of, I'm a threat for 3 minutes, and then I will see you at level 20, and nowhere in between. That's kind of where the Cthulhu's likely to be at, but at least a little bit more of a threat since he's building into this very early Pythags piece, I would have to assume. If he goes Soul Gem, he's just on something.
Yeah, well, Connor on a little bit of a retreat right now as Worst Turtle shows up into the lane. The ult is forced, and that's all they'll say about that. But like you said, Panvit's going for this Pythags piece here. This is one that we've seen a little bit before. One that I believe it's Ramakami has liked running, but we'll talk about that in a moment. As Echrome and Davey looking to take a little bit of a spat. As Preds catches out a dash. Echrome, though, turns it around. And Rapio finds Ice Silence in a great pick.
And that's how you have to play against these mage supports. The more pressure you can put them on before they get those tools required to keep them safe, the better result you end up with. Aphrodite at level 4 is balanced around the fact that she's a mage, and she's very unsafe, so too is Echrome as he gets murdered by 3 people in a tower. Both of these dual laners at level 4 don't have a lot of safety to deal with. So if you can pull them in with the Baron ult, if you can rotate Rapio over, they don't have everything they traditionally would want to keep them alive. They are so far behind, and this Aphrodite has so little defense in the build already that it's very difficult to keep her safe. And they're kind of just laying on the pressure in dual lane. I mean, we saw a lot of attention paid to the solo lane previously. Looks like they are very well aware of the fact that with the start that Silenced and Echrome are off to, if they can prevent them from getting online for the next 3 to 5 minutes, it's going to be incredibly difficult for the Scarabs to position around these Gold Fury fights and pretty much defend anything, much less this purple buff.
Yeah, that 1,000 gold lead, I feel, isn't split between the team, but just these two members. Look at this Echrome. He's just trying to farm. He's just trying to get a little farm, and already Preds and Rapio, they have decided to just set up camp this side of the map.
He's dead.
As Echrome, look at this. Echrome is forced to get the Aphrodite ult and shell, and still Preds ends up finding a pick. They are level 7 to level 5.
And somebody tell Echrome that kids are watching at home and he needs to not lazy back around a corner. He literally... Oh, well, hang on. He's coming back in.
Oh, no. He goes back in, but I don't think this is a fight they necessarily want. Preds will be under a little bit of duress as they're left alone, but it seems that Rapio is out of mana and so does not want to go ahead and stick around too much longer. I had a fear that this might be just conveyor belting themselves back into die again, but good recognition from the Scarabs there that they were okay to do so.
And if you think about it, Blur, what else is Echrome using that ult on? Maybe he would need it here, as there's even more aggression in the duo lane. Preds putting some damage onto Silence, he'll pull him back in.
That's one pulled in. Davey now starting to try and get some wiggles on. Silence, though, still ends up falling. Worst Turtle makes the first rotation we've seen to this side of the map. And Preds may be falling for it. The water hands are good. There's the crushing wave. The shell is good. But one more water cannon will do it. And that finally puts a kill on the boards for the Scarabs.
I love watching early game Rom just auto attack people and try to look like a threat. If that's like an on her or something, then Worst Turtle's like, oh, I might get like impaled into the tower. But there is nothing that Davey can do there to keep his support alive. He's frantically using every astral arrow in his quiver to try to pose a threat to a full health jungler, and it just is not going to work. But briefly, Blur, I want to go back to the previous point. What else is Echrome using that Chernobog ultimate on, if not to return to lane? They're not making any aggressive plays in the duo lane for the foreseeable future with the deficit that they're at right now. You might as well try to get yourself back to lane, get yourself in a position where you don't miss that farm. If he doesn't ult back to lane, he misses that wave in duo. It's unlikely that they won that fight as a result of the Living Nightmare ultimate, but just getting back in, making sure you don't get farther behind, I think is probably the best value that you're going to get out of the Chernobog ult when you're 2.5, almost 3 levels down.
Oh my goodness, and look at this again. The gold buff's up, the purple buff is about to spawn. Silenced is now kind of pinned themselves into this lane to try and help. If this is happening, is this the best option for a defense they've got, is try and meet them face to face when they're still 2 levels down apiece?
Well, it seems to be their only option so far, and they've got Worst Turtle here on rotation. Steel will not go down in favor of the Solar Scarabs, but like you said, Panvich is here. This could be a good fight for him.
They might have actually just baited in the Wargs. They'll leave Davey right now, who's up into the ult, looking for one more shot. They'll throw Worst Turtle, because he gets a blink into the backline. Rapio might try and find something. Echrome ends up finding like Davey. And Rapio is able to find Worst Turtle, thanks to the last Astral Barrage shot stopping a back. But it's just a 1-for-1.
It's a 1-for-1, but they at least answer back to the aggression in the duo lane and prevent any further snowball. Making sure that Echrome can actually get some of his farm is going to become increasingly important in this game, as the Wargs will continue to just layer on pressure and try to make sure that he can never play the game. If the Wargs have their way, Echrome will be standing in his fountain watching 5 people zone waves from him at the Phoenix line. It's unlikely we get to that point because the Scarabs also get to play the game, but that is the ideal position for the Wargs right now. They want to continue to make Echrome uncomfortable, abuse this Aphrodite who's only going to become tankier and more difficult to deal with the passage of time, and ensure that their duo lane stays far enough ahead that once this Gold Fury is able to be contested, they can immediately rotate over Kana, who has just been proxy farming the whole time, and start to do these neutral objectives. They need to transition this into a meaningful lead, Blur. They got off to a similar, albeit not as explosive start in game 1, where they were getting all the kills, they had all the pressure in the world, and they didn't convert it into any of these neutral objectives. I'd like to see them make some kind of call for Kana to come over, maybe for the next purple buff invid, transition that into a Gold Fury fight, or just outright try to pull it, because, I mean, you are very far ahead in duo lane right now.
You are, and you can see already how it's spilling out into problems for other lanes. Worst Turtle feels so pressured and threatened by what Rapio and Davey are able to do. They're going for a defense second item. This is a Hobwa. Can you really afford defense second item on Hobwa jungle?
You can if you're not planning on doing anything for quite some time. This defense item prevents him from just getting outright one-shot by face-checking Rapio in the jungle and making sure that he can continue to farm for the foreseeable future without having to worry about getting absolutely blown up. This is not an item where they're going to be fighting around him. It's more likely he's just going to be trying to keep himself safe, keep farming, and wait for Echrome to ideally get online enough that they can play the game, man, because everything on the left side of the map is Wargs territory at this point.
And look at how well they've been able to position themselves. Game 1, they go for Pyromancer. What do solo Scarabs do? They go straight to Gold Fury and get that. But now they're too far behind to go for that. Davey, though, forced into the ultimate at the sight of Worst Turtle. Let's see if the defense pays off for them. The answer right now is a resounding no. Preds shuts that one down. Should buy some magical defense next time. They'll finish off the Breastplate of Valor as they sulk back in base. And Niflheim Wargs, I feel like if they really wanted to, they could still go and just look for this Gold Fury now.
They don't have Kana here, though, so probably not. I'm sorry, Blur. I can't stop laughing at the fact that Preds 360'd that kill onto Worst Turtle. Like, it's not the first time we've seen a Baron not just immediately pull somebody in. That's how you maximize the value on that ultimate, is making sure that it's only, like, about every other tick you really need to keep somebody still and prevent them from escaping. But usually that's just, like, a little flick back and forth. Preds full, like, Call of Duty 360 styled on them to pull them back into the coffin. And that's just, sometimes you gotta have fun with it, man. Especially in a game like this where you're 3,500 gold up and there's not a whole lot else to be doing other than continuing to war crime the enemy team. I think that it's a pretty good look.
Well, good luck would be a Gold Fury in the back pocket as well, but it's warded out by the Scarabs, so they know this is happening. That said, response time is Worst Turtle going, guys, they're there, I don't want to go in, can you guys go in? Because no one else feels comfortable right now. These solo laners are off battling over a blue buff, and it will not be stolen away by Pamvich this time, but SAP 7, important to note, all this duo lane, all this pressure here, SAP 7 has gone somewhat unnoticed and is going for that exact same build as before.
He's gone unnoticed by his support, is I think the important part here. Because Silence has had to pay so much attention to the left side of the map, he's not linked up to this AMC very often, up until pretty much just this point, in fact, which prevents AMC from being able to leave the tower. Remember we talked about in Game 1, he needs vision, and he needs ideally another teammate to be able to do that. And because the Aphrodite has spent so much time in left, he hasn't had the chance to farm anything, he's falling behind. Now we got the Gold Fury to deal with.
Look at this, a beautiful work there from Connor. I was wondering why they were going for the invade. The answer is simple, keep eyes on the jungler. A nice 360. Unfortunately, the ult timer runs out, and so iSilenced will be able to walk away from this one without losing their life. But great work from the Wargs there. Across the map play, everyone is working for the same objective.
Yes, and that objective was the Gold Fury. And it sounds weird to say that Kana just war criming Worst Turtle at his speed buff is just him trying to set up for that Gold Fury, but it's really just they want as many people to look at Kana as possible to make that as free of a Gold Fury contest as possible. If they can make one other person try to help Worst Turtle at that speed buff invade, that means that there's one fewer person available for that Gold Fury defense. Doesn't end up mattering. They still end up getting all of the value that they needed in securing that Gold Fury, but it's just an attraction tactic more than anything to make sure that, you know, nobody is willing or able to step up and help them defend that one, just minimizing the risk associated with pulling the first major objective of the game.
And even if they do show up, take a look at Pred's second item there, Heart Ward Amulet alongside both upgraded relics. I don't even think this whole war poses a threat, especially with that defense second item.
Yeah, he's very unlikely to be able to actually kill anybody at this point. And actually, as you bring our attention to the relics, Blur, if we can check out this Cursed Ankh upgrade that we've got for Preds here. This is, I believe, the Drowned Ankh, if I'm not mistaken. Which is, that's going to put some pools on the ground every time you heal. And if you step in those pools, you lose HP, you take some damage, and you also get the cooldown refreshed on the Ankh duration. So the other Ankh upgrade is the one that we've seen a lot more of, where the healing, instead of going to the enemy team, goes to you. And that's kind of like a burst engagement where you want to prevent them from healing, you want to keep yourself topped up. This one is for an extended engagement where you have a lot of instances of healing. If that Cthulhu pops the ult and then tries to keep his team sustained up, tries to move forward with the movement speed that'll give you, he's dropping a whole bunch of pools of miasma on the ground, making it a little bit more difficult for the Scarabs to move around and really play around that cooldown. So I think that it's different than what we traditionally see, but I think we're actually likely to see a whole lot more of this relic upgrade because this has been slept on for quite some time.
It's a pretty good one. I was going to ask, does that also work with the AMC hives? But I think that's HP 5, so
correct.
That would be ridiculous.
Imagine though.
No, thankfully the change to HP 5 is a minor buff for the Amusing Carb in this matchup. Unfortunately, Echrome could do with a minor buff or two. They will get up into the ultimate,
he's 1
but
HP,
I don't...
He's 1 HP.
He's 1 HP. He literally can't land anywhere. He will go up into the wall, and instead will try and juke out one more shot needed. Can't find it, so it's a TKO. Davey, unfortunately, will not be making any kind of montage with this one. Panvic's rotation here will cut out, at the very least, Connor's rotation, but it's a very defensive play from the Scarabs.
I think Kana's actually probably happy with that because there's not really anything else going on here, and he ends up teleporting to solo lane instead and just continuing to farm 0, 0, and 0, blissfully unaware of anything else going on the map. It is just the solo lane experience right now for my man who hasn't really noticed anything else going on. They've just, the callouts Kana has been receiving is, all right, we're going to do gold here. All right, can you evade that speed buff? All right, yeah, go ahead and keep farming. It's just a solo lane paradise for him.
He's proxying between Tier 2 and Phoenix at this point, and the last time Panvic made a rotation was over towards this Gold Fury side. He did nothing, he just pushed down the tower, and he's level 19. Look at the items he's gone for. He's not got defense, he's just got movement speed to run around and be a menace.
And the insane thing, Blur, is that he doesn't have a physical defense item against a double physical backline. That just tells you he had no intentions of coming over here pretty much until now, as this Primal Fury finally respawns and is looked at by the Wargs.
That is known by the Scarabs again, but at this point, take a look at Worst Turtle, take a look at Panvic. They are giving this up. Niflheim Wargs grabbed this Primal Fury completely uncontested here at 19 minutes in. They're up 6k, and unfortunately, I don't see that window for Scarabs getting back in getting any closer.
No, it is getting farther away, if anything. And I mean, you can point to the fact that the Scarabs draft, if it gets to late game full build level 20, is insane. Like, all of these characters are significantly better level 20 than they are at level 15. Guardians have incredible scaling. Panvic is going to be a menace Cthulhu, known for his late game teamfight viability. Worst Turtle being able to one-shot somebody even with the defense item is going to be crucial. Both of these auto attack characters need every single drop of gold that they have to make sure that they get very effective items online, and it's going to take some time for them to bring somebody down, but I mean, they're bringing Panvic down no problem.
I mean, look at this. This is iDavey. He's no longer the one quivering with the quiver. Those shots now ringing true and a lot of damage in the process. Kin size and the penetration. Panvic cannot sustain against that. And look at this, 20 minutes in, we got a pick, we go in fire, and it's already at half health.
And Worst Turtle is zoned out here. Nobody even close to this one, Blur, as Worst Turtle is dealt with by Kana, preventing anybody from getting to this one. It does mean, however, that finally, for the first time this game, Echrome can walk past the halfway point without worrying about 4 people killing him for no reason. So shout out my boy Echrome for successfully farming a duo wave without just getting collapsed on by the entirety of the enemy team. But that comes with a sacrifice, Blur. That means that the Wargs, who were already dictating the pace of this game, doing seemingly whatever they wanted to with this map, now with a Pyromancer bomb in hand, now with the Fire Giant buff in hand, 8,000 gold, 10,000 experience to work with, it is near impossible for the Scarabs to keep their base intact at this point. It's going to have to be an incredible fight for them, where Panvic gets a whole bunch of value. They're going to have to successfully burst down Kana and somehow prevent Rapio from killing one of the backliners. If the Scarabs can successfully keep the backline of the Wargs out, sunder the Vomit, stinger the Vomit with the AMC ult, and then burst him down with the double ADCs, that is their only avenue to keep their base alive. Any other circumstances, any other series of events that we see on this Phoenix is likely to be the Wargs ending up with one of these birds.
It's a scary look. I mean, that was 2 members in the mid lane, and it was just the back line. And they're retreating, they're running. Yes, it's a tier 1, so they're fine to give it up, but there's not even a, let's throw out some damage. It's a full-on retreat. Connor just sat on tower line waiting for minions here. It looks like it's going to be a full sweep for these towers right now. The problem I have, though, is Silence is so far behind in their build. I don't think they're going to get a chance to use these Sunders. And with how far ahead Niflheim Wargs are, they don't even have to use this Drowned Dog.
Now, the crazy thing is, though, support items are so good. Even though I'm looking at 3 items for Silence, I'm looking at what the 3 items are, and they're incredibly good, cost-effective items. Thebes is a very... Wow, that's a lot of damage on the sap. Thebes is a very good overall defense tool. Sentinel's Blessing, one of the best per gold defense items you can get in the entire game. And they have the Erosion to help shut down this Vomit. All the tools are there, even though it's only 3 total items. They're 3 very effective ones.
Well, let's see if it does pay off. Connor, blink forwards into the backline, causes enough space to go ahead and melt the Phoenix. Now, though, that Erosion might be coming into play a little bit. You can see that health bar not gaining as much of a shield, but it doesn't matter. They've got the rest of the sustain from the team, and they can go ahead and look to potentially swap an invade around, but instead they still want to take this major objective of a fight here. There's a teleport around the back. Rapio and Connor looking to loop around. Silence gets pulled back into the life of the party. And now Panvich is forced into the ultimate to try and keep everyone alive. But Rapio and Connor are just menaces here.
And they're creating a whole bunch of space. Panvich enough so that the rest of his team can disengage there. Looked like Sap might have fallen even through the beads and the Aegis, but successfully preserves that deathless mark, and ironically, Blair has the exact same stat line as not only the enemy mid laner, but also the enemy solo laner. 3 different players 0-0 and 1 in this one. It hasn't been a lot of kills, really. It's just been a lot of space deprivation and farm deprivation in the favor of the Niflheim Wargs. The Scarabs not being able to do seemingly anything in this game is making it so that they have no avenue back in. You would ideally like to have one lane that was at least even, maybe ideally ahead if one of your lanes are going to be as far behind as the dual lane was. They did not have that. Panvich was okay, I guess, but considering the fact that Kana can rotate the map much more effectively, get a whole lot more farm, a whole lot quicker than a Cthulhu can, it made it very difficult for them to find any value for the first 20 minutes. And now they've finally got everybody to the point where almost all of the starter items are getting finished here. Echrome likely to be thinking about selling off that Death's Toll for something else after he finishes off what's likely to be a Crusher in that last spot. The Titan's Bane would be kind of silly, but they're getting the items online. But thing is, Blair, they are quickly running out of time in this game.
Yeah, with the left side, Phoenix down, Fire Giant respawning, Davy, Gunter, the only 2 needed. Everyone else not necessarily even worried about zoning everyone out. They're doing Pyromancer, Connor's doing what they've spent the whole game doing and pushing up to structure lines. Everyone from Solar Scarabs is here, and this, like you said, they've got to make the hold here. Thankfully, their comp looks like it does well at sieging out minions, but not quite so good when Connor wants to blink in.
Yeah, AMC is very annoying to deal with on siege defense just because he does clear the wave very effectively. His poke is quite good. Not as good against a team with Fire Giant sustain, especially considering he doesn't have all of his items online just yet, but we'll at least give them something to work with here as see a 3-2 split from the Wargs.
Weird 3-2 split as well. Both the front line are in mid lane, but somehow Rapio with that is able to go ahead and push this out. Gunter and Davey are just having the time of their lives here, feeling like the big I am over in the solo side of the map. They're objectively the ones who are supposed to be here doing these structures, but they've already got it down to, what, that's got to be like 20% left, and with this mounting pressure, 1 more wave, 3 more basics, I think, and it's probably gone.
And they're going to go for it here as Silence takes a whole bunch of damage. Pred steps forward, Davey steps in, and that's going to almost be the bird.
Almost, but Silence ult is forced, and now Connor gets to blink in and have some fun in the backline. The Astral Barrage, not good enough to find out a kill. The Phoenix has fallen down, but Black Turtle is big with a crushing wave. This is a potential turnaround play here. Silence gets to live, and they'll push everyone off. But Niflheim Wargs do not overcommit. They got what they wanted, and E-Chrome will get away with their life, but it costs them both relics in their pocket.
It cost them also all 3 Phoenixes here, Blur, as nobody was around to defend the left-hand Phoenix. I think that maybe a player could have moseyed their way over there in time to defend, but despite the fact that the Scarabs finally kind of bite back, I mean, they kill the enemy's support for the second time this game, 5-2 now for Preds. It isn't really enough there. It's kind of feeling inevitable at this point that the Wargs end up taking this one away and forcing us to a game number 3. 3 Phoenixes down, Enhanced Fire Giant due to spawn in another 2.5 minutes if the game even lasts that long. It's going to be a very difficult spot for the Scarabs to defend in. In fact, it is just about the hardest position you can defend in the entirety of the game of Smite is with 3 Phoenixes down. This is usually when teams look for some kind of desperation play. If you let the map come to you naturally in a position like this, if you just allow the enemy team to get the Primal Fury, push the waves up, do the Fire Giant, take another Phoenix when it respawns, you're likely to end up losing. All of the momentum is against you, all of the structure of the map is against you. You need some kind of very convincing fight in a manner that the Wargs are not anticipating if you want to be able to take this one away from the Solar Scarabs. You're really looking to steal this game off of something they're not expecting, be that, 5 people grouped up at a buff, waiting in the jungle for somebody to walk through, contesting this Fire Giant in full, sending it. That's why the Wargs are just keeping these waves pushed up and preventing them from doing anything sneaky and nefarious. If they've got everybody in front of them, they might not even need the Fire Giant to polish this one off.
I love that idea, like you mentioned. They're just playing to the Scarabs' outs. It's like an old chess thing. Your best move is not what's good for you, it's what's worst for your opponent here. Solar Scarabs, if they're all on the map, they can't get a sneaky play. They can't think about pushing out. As you can see, everyone is stretched thin on the map. At the very least, this is going to give them golden experience if anyone still needs it. But when you're down 13,000 gold, it hardly feels good to say, hey, you got a wave, because now E-Chrome is being focused out by Connor, and look at the respect immediately. Complete disengage. Connor is just too much of a problem for a single person to deal with.
And can we talk about the fact that, despite you saying that Kana has the second lowest player damage in the lobby, he has been level 20 for the past 45 minutes of this game, and it's only been 30 minutes, Blur. Like, he has had the world to work with. He's been a whale the entire game, and he hasn't even been needed for most of these fights. His job largely has just been continue to farm, we'll let you know if we need you. And he has not been needed. The Solar Scarabs are going to need to find their way to this Fire Giant pit, Blur, but with it immediately being bursted as it ticks over to EFG, it is a tough spot for the Scarabs here. They've got the wave pushed up and left a little bit. E-Chrome's over there to deal with that. Middle Phoenix is back up right as due to respawn in just a couple of seconds here. The fact that these are staggered is going to make this a little bit easier to deal with, but I mean, we're working with very slim margins for the Scarabs.
And that mid Phoenix almost already falling down just to Preds at this point in time. Scarabs left Phoenix has respawned, but there's a minion wave there, so Worst Turtle's having to deal with it. Mid falls to a single more love tap from Davey. Now we'll have to see. This base is slowly encroaching closer and closer. The Wargs looking to go ahead and take this to a game 3 state here. Rapio's pushing up this right side. Everyone from Wargs is so spread.
And that's to prevent the Scarabs from just all-inning a fight, which is really what they want here. They need to live or die off of this next engagement, whether that's all in their favor, they can stall out the game, or they lose. It's happening anyway. You gotta make something happen.
Oh no! Turtle goes for the ultimate to try and fight Rapio, but instead gets picked up themselves. The Ram ult was there in case it was needed. Now Panvich is marching their way back towards some semblance of safety. Sab 7 and E-Chrome now looking to try and put out damage. Preds eats a lot of it, but Connor gets to just walk in for free. The Phoenix falls, and there are all 5 members here with Fire Giant in tow. Health bars get low, but they could still mount some pressure.
And the Wargs successfully bringing down that bird there is just about all they really need to do in this position. They successfully reduced the base again to 0 Phoenixes once more. Now they can back up, sustain, grab that Oni Fury, and then look to push the game back in. They really just needed to make sure that they didn't get full committed on, didn't get wiped there, and successfully did so. They do lose Rapio to a very questionable positional call there to be standing in the red buff pit while all of the Scarabs are marching forward on vision. It's not the best look for them, but, you know, Scarabs at least managed to stall out the game for the time being.
That is a good look because, like you said, Niflheim Wargs want this Oni Fury. It may not do much against fire minions, but hey, it stops Oni fire minions coming through. Scarabs buy themselves a lifeline here.
And a lifeline is perhaps the optimal word there, because this is no longer a position where one fight gets you back into this game for the Scarabs. If you're not wiping every single member of the Niflheim Wargs in one engagement, you are not going to be able to make an aggressive play. This is a point for the Scarabs where you've got to win 2, maybe 3 more fights in a pretty convincing, if not a complete wipeout manner, in order to get yourself back into this game where you can think about winning instead of thinking about not losing. The whole game plan for the Scarabs for the past 30 minutes or so, ever since they were down 1,000 gold at 2 minutes, has been, how do we not lose this game? And they've done a pretty good job so far of clinging on to dear life. I mean, they have prevented the Wargs from ending the game to the point that another enhanced Fire Giant is going to be needed to make that potentially happen. Now they're at the position where it's, how do we make this no longer losing game into a game that we can actually win? And it's got to be some kind of full commit somewhere. Because again, if you let the map come to you, you're just giving so many opportunities to the Wargs.
And this might be the one they go for. Connor's been pushing up this whole side. Everyone's trying to chase him out. They will find the kill onto him. That's good. Fire Giant hasn't respawned. That's another lifeline for them. It's not a win as such. But now Solar Scarabs could potentially try and actually sit here with some semblance of a fight. It would be a 4v5, and they'd have to win it quick.
Gotta go.
But they might have to give this one up. Fire Giant started. Fire Giant's going down. Panvich is here. He's going in for it. He's looking for the ultimate to try and steal it away. He does not get it. And now may very well have thrown his life away. The rest of the team coming back. But again, it's buying time.
It is buying time, but they're looking to buy the fight here, actually. Worst Turtle wrapping around. Has a good angle.
It's a good angle for them. Preds again is the one being picked off at this point. Out comes the drowned Ark, but Preds falls to Worst Turtle. Silence is gas pedaling the team as hard as they can to keep everyone alive. They end up falling to the last Astral Barrage shot. But look at that. Mid-Phoenix has respawned. Sap 7 is back at base. Solar Scarabs are starting to claw back some form of a way out of this.
Yeah, the only thing, though, Kana just now respawned, has the teleport available here, Blur, so could swing things back in their favor. Teleports into that ward. Base is being broken here. Echrome takes so much damage he has to reset, and Worst Turtle is gone!
He's absolutely evaporated at this point. Rapio credited with the kill. Panvich looking to try and take down Rapio, but cannot be done. And that might just be it with everyone gone. Looked a little rough towards the end, but with the lead the Niflheim Wargs had accrued from minute 1, they find themselves a way back in. We're going to game 3.
We are going to game 3, and some theatrics there from the Scarabs to at least force that to a 35-minute game. It's not very often you can be down 8,000 gold at about the 15-minute mark and then still somehow manage to keep the game alive for just about twice that much time. But the Scarabs did a fantastic job of making that interesting. I mean, a lot of teams probably crumble under that pressure. I think that with how ahead the Wargs were and how well they were playing that map, more often than not, teams will kind of roll over and think about game 3. The Scarabs were fighting tooth and nail to the very end there, trying even with their backs against the wall to make that a 2-0. It does end up forcing us to a game 3 here, but I think that the Scarabs at least put up enough of a fight there that they're not going to be going into this third game unexpecting some kind of similar positioning, some kind of similar strategy from the Niflheim Wargs. They've had enough time to talk about what adaptations they're going to make going into this game 3. I think that it's going to be a very much better balanced one than the game 2 we just watched.
I would hope so on that side of things. And you mentioned that early aggression side of things. We saw a lot of invades from Preds come through, and then Rapio could rotate. Is that something that just needs to be changing of picks to try and deal with that? Is it this Aphrodite that is the reason why the Niflheim Wargs are going for the invades here, or?
It could be. I think that's it's definitely a target because the Aphrodite again is not very good for the first several levels, especially not at level 1. Maybe something with a little bit more crowd control, or at least that can threaten Preds a little bit better for trying to invade that could be a different look. Or maybe even just better pathing from Echrome there, because if he doesn't walk in aggressively and they don't get slaughtered for trying to walk into the tower, that could have been a very different game. So there's definitely some adaptations to be made, and we'll know in the first minute of this game 3 whether or not they successfully crack the code.
Indeed. It's all should-have, could-haves, and would-haves for the game 2, but game 3 will be coming to you shortly. First, we've got to go ahead and get things ready, and we'll take a quick break to do that. Here we are then, Kaiser. Who would have thought? From a best of 3 down to a best of 1, Niflheim Wargs take game number 2 with a pretty aggressive strategy and some pretty interesting plays in the early duo lane side of things. As we go straight on into picks and bans for game 3, I'm wondering what changes Scarabs are going to make up here.
Yeah, there's 2 things that I want to see adapted going into this game number 3. I want to see Kana not playing Euro Truck Simulator on his second monitor and actually participating in most of the game as opposed to having second lowest player damage like 30 minutes into the game. And I want to see the Solar Scarabs have some kind of dedicated strategy to dealing with Preds walking at this purple buff level 1. He has done it 2 games in a row. The first game it was, you know, fine. It didn't really make a lasting impression. We talked about it briefly. We moved on. Game number 3, game 2, that was the deciding factor of the game, I would argue. They got so far behind off of that one play early on that they just could not get back into the game. So I'd like to see them have some kind of game plan in order where they know Preds is likely to be coming. What are you going to do to deal with it?
Well, as it stands right now, the Verman is taken off the table, so Connor will have to play something else. Maybe not Euro Truck Simulator 2, maybe another farming simulator, you know. So he's going to have to find something else to play here. And it is going to be Solar Scarabs first picking this Hades to answer back, but these are all target bans, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
Everything that's considered meta still stands on the table.
For the most part, I mean, I think that you could argue that Vomit and Circuit pretty top meta and unavailable pretty importantly here. The fact that Worst Turtle can't play that initiator, at least not on the Circuit, going to have to look for either some kind of different build from Panvich on this Hades where he can be a more conventional frontliner, or a different jungler that can also build a little bit more hybrid, a little bit tankier, and be that entry frag once more for the Solar Scarabs. Gonna have to be some kind of adaptation from them here. And we talked about this in game 1, Blur. This Heimdall for E-Chrome. You were talking about target bans all set long, and now this one's finally left open.
This way.
Well, as well as that, we're also going to see what the benefit of first pick is you get a pseudo set of bans, where you can take away what your enemy was playing. That Baron Samedi, likely a shot at Preds as well. And the Heimdall, we've seen E-Chrome in the past. Every time E-Chrome gets mentioned, it's Heim. On the other side of things, this is one that Rapio has made a signature name on. Hasn't been picked yet. Let's see if that can change here.
Yeah, Thor is a very good god right now, and also notably Hercules showing up for the first time this set, if I'm not mistaken, and a character that we've seen a whole lot of very recently. I put him up there with things like the Guan Yu, the Vamin, the Horus, all of these guys kind of in that same conversation for the top solo laner right now. So Kana going to have a very different tool to play with in the solo lane than he did on the Vamin. But I do want to put some attention on this Thor, because it's one that we saw every single game banned out, then kind of left open. And players haven't always been picking it. It's been a lot more of the Circuit, it's been a lot more of the Hebo, the Ao Kuang, the Set, things like that. The Thor has kind of been quiet, and I'm very curious to see why. I hope that Rapio demonstrates to us the power that this character still has, because those global rotations, especially when paired with that Horus, going to make it feel like the skies are raining down on the Solar Scarabs.
Well, it may not be the only thing raining down with the Horus pickup as well. A lot of global rotations available. And most importantly, I feel this is still a pick that Preds could comfortably start trying to bully and invade on here. It's going to be Naja for Worst Turtle after the second phase of bans is heavily focusing them. So with that, the Naja pickup, let's see what they're going to bring up. And apparently it's walking right into a trap. It's still double hunter for Solar Scarabs, but an Ulra for that mid lane.
In kind of unconventional fashion as well. Like, there's a couple of different hunters I'd probably think of before Uller for a mid laner right now. I do think that you're very right to point out the fact that they haven't pivoted from this double hunter composition the entire set. The pieces have kind of been changed around, but this is still very much the same identity that they've had the whole set long. The Uller's a very heat check kind of character. We'll know very early on whether or not Sap is on with this character or if he's off with this character. So keep an eye on that mid lane, because especially against something like the Thoth, where very long range poke but very susceptible to getting gone on, if you can get within that range, should be some fireworks for us to watch.
Certainly should be, so let's not waste any more time on this one. The best of three comes down to its final game here. Niflheim Wargs and Solar Scarabs both would like this game under their belt. I just want to pick up on that last point. The Thoth pickup, usually with the Naja, you want the option, but hold that a sec. Silenced. It's not one member this time, it's two members here this time to poke him away. And Preds is, unsurprisingly, just going to stand around and make Silenced hate playing the game for a bit.
Oh my god, I'm just now realizing how smart that is, because they never wanted to kill him there. They just wanted to make Silenced low enough HP that this play is a little bit easier for him. And because Silenced is low enough that he can't really contest the buff invade coming out from Preds, this is something we saw, Season 8, if I'm not mistaken, before Invader's Curse, where it's just like, alright, you invade my stuff, I'll invade your stuff, everybody's gonna be sad, and we'll come talk to each other in about 3 minutes.
Oh, that's so funny. Unfortunately, the leash range on the camps does mean that it will only be the smalls. Preds actually is going to go back towards Silence first. And that Invader's Curse is still on them, so Silenced here, trying to get aggressive with it. We'll pop both shards here for both of them at this point in time, but there's no such luck as Pred again walks forwards, but Davy's more than comfortable here.
I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't see a little bit. Like, E-Chrome has been dead every single game to walk into lane, man. 140 HP is not your ideal start. I was going to say, though, I'm surprised we didn't see more commit from Preds there on the Horus, because he used the Wing Shard, as you pointed out. Both characters used the Wing Shard, or excuse me, the Horn Shard in that engagement. But he didn't burn the Horrific Emblem, which I thought might have been a good way to pretty much force both of the dual laners of the Solar Scarabs out of the lane completely, make them reset if nothing else, or even potentially look for a kill on Silenced, who was still far enough forward with the Invader's Curse still on him. Maybe could have been an opportunity there, but holds on to that one instead and can now look for a little bit more orchestrated aggression over here in the dual lane.
So far, so good for the Niflheim Wargs here, finding themselves up about that 300, but more importantly, it's pressuring E-Chrome. Just a single combo from this Horus is already threatening them to the point where Shell is expended here, and as a result, I'm very concerned that this third game is going to play out like the second here.
And it's already looking that way, not quite as so grandiose of fashion as it was in game number 2, where they were already 1,000 gold down at this point. Blur, I really want to hammer that point home, because that was insane to me. Now only being about 200, 300 gold down wave to wave, so much more manageable position. You're still losing out on all of the duo pressure in the world, losing out on some of that farm as it gets denied into tower. You don't get the shield buff if you're the Solar Scarabs, but it is not an insurmountable obstacle as it felt like in game number 2.
Well, it is holding, like you said, it is holding, and I feel like this change up from the Aphrodite will be one that we get to talk about a lot more here, but both these junglers look to make a rotation in. Worst Turtle does not get stunned out, will take a little bit of damage, but it's still early days as Rapio instead just joins up with Connor to try and grab the buff, but I don't believe anyone was quite so lucky for it. Now the question is this Hercules going to make as big of an impact as this Faman in the actual laning phase?
I would say probably, and I'll put a question mark on that, because in my head, Blur, Hercules into Hades should be a pretty good matchup. Hades just wants to clear the wave and then walk away. Hercules has the tools required to crowd control him and make sure that's a difficult undertaking for him, and he's not just able to walk up, clear the wave, walk away. He at least should feel threatened in that lane against something like Hercules that has such high kill pressure and high kill power. He gets all of that additional auto attack damage from the passive. The abilities have incredibly high base damage. The boulder is a large, very unmissable form of damage that can really burst him down if he tries to go into the ult. He's got the tools required to make this a difficult laning phase for Panvich, but at the same time, man, Hades can be so safe if you want to play it that way.
if they play that way, that is the question. As Okana, interestingly, they've gone for Tainted Steel every time, but now on this Hercules, going for the Sigil of the Old Guard to start late game. That to me screams he actually wants to be involved with the team, but keep an eye on Thor now. They've gone up. Are they looking for sap in lane? The answer is yes! They will find a lot of damage onto them, but Beads forced, and they will avoid Outworst Turtle's ultimate, and now they're left up without a paddle up the creek. Thankfully, though, the Ulra is there to offer some assistance.
God, imagine a world where Gunter has enough mana to rip the, I thought that he still had the final judgment. That one's apparently on cooldown, so even if he had the mana, it wouldn't have helped him there. But a great short-range teleport, we call that the short port, from Rapio there to keep him away from that Nausea ultimate. Worst Turtle couldn't find the mark there because Rapio moved 3 inches to the right, and that was apparently enough to prevent him from getting grabbed. Does force the beads off of Sap as well. That's a very worthwhile cooldown to take off of him now that, you know, the Thor has the Jotun's Wrath available. That's going to be a lot more frequently that he can start ripping these ultimates down. Anvil of Dawn will be a very short cooldown at this point that can pressure an Uller who traditionally would like to play very aggressively. Going to have to think twice about stepping up to contest these mid-camps, pressuring Gunter on these waves. Sap is in a position kind of similar to how he was in game number 2 when he was on the AMC, game number 1, where he's just got to be more careful.
Well, in this situation, Pamvich does have the ult available to them, but everyone's so far away. Sap 7 does land a good stun, but a nice wall from Rapio turns around, recognizing they do not want to let Connor get picked off here. Is silenced in a 2v2, ends up falling, and Davey in the ult will come down and pick that one up. So it's first blood to the Wargs, but this time it's not 30 seconds in.
Yeah, it's a much more manageable first blood as opposed to the very oppressive one that we saw in game number 2. And that is kind of the duality of Baron in this long lane, because he's very good on the front foot. That root can feel very oppressive if it's constantly forcing you to use your movement ability and take away your safety tools that you can't trade very effectively, so that you feel at least a little bit more uneasy trying to step up to the farm. But on the back foot, he's very prone to getting bullied. And we talked about it with the Aphrodite. It's a similar conversation with the Baron, where it is a mage at the end of the day. As tanky as you'd like to build them, as good of tools as they have for their own survivability, the base stats still are a mage. And because of that, you are still a lower damage threshold to get that kill. And especially when you're going something so slow like this Prophetic Cloak, it has to stack up. It'll take so long for Eye Silence to get this one fully stacked up that he's going to be a target for the foreseeable future. It doesn't give you a whole lot of prots early, very good late, but if they can keep the pressure on to Silence the same way that they did in game number 1, could be an issue for him.
Bees forced, and Echrome will use the Bifrost to get on out of dodge here, but starting up with that Devos and stacking it up. It's the same build every time from Echrome. Is that something that Niflheim Wargs can play around, or is it just a case of, well, he's not going crit?
In game number 1, I would say it's just preference, and I don't think there's a big difference. I mean, it does give you better sustain in lane, makes it so that you can keep yourself topped up a little bit better. Game number 2, I would argue that he just outright needed it in order to be able to get any farm there, as we'll see the ult forced out from Echrome there. And Beads as well also expended a little bit earlier, so no safety tools for this Heimdall, who, again, it is a good lane sustain tool. It'll make sure he can stay on the map and farm and not have to reset quite as often, but I don't think it's really one where you can see that he's got it and then play a certain way around it. It's not like we're talking about the difference between going Beads and this is
well, Echrome. Right now is Rapio Beads. Now is Rapio Beads. Did go up into the ult there, but hey, if a Rom ult's in lane and no one's there to see it, does he still have his ult up? The answer is no, but nobody knows that.
I was going to say, looks like no, and looks like it could be some pressure over here and right. Kana is finally answered back here as a kill for the Solar Scarabs. Panvich and Worst Turtle use both of the ults and successfully bring down the solo laner. Echrome is going to have nightmares tonight, man. That's if he gets any sleep at all after this pressure that he's had on him the entire set so far. It wasn't nearly as bad in game 1, but they seem to have noticed some kind of chink in the armor in game 2 out of this dual lane from the Solar Scarabs, and they are absolutely jamming every sharp object they can find into that chink in the armor, and Rapio is probably just going to live over here for the foreseeable future.
Or Preds is going to live over here, because look at this right now. They just want to fight him. They're on a ward, so it is spotted out, and thankfully with that Hafoon, I believe it's Hafoon. Horfuth, that's the one, yes, Wrath of Horfuth. Because I'm thinking of the skin where he calls it out. That's the only reason I know the name of the sword. He will see it from further away, but look at what we've got from the Scarabs here. This Ulra, I have to imagine it's going the same build that we've seen this Amuzen card go for, right?
Yeah, we won't have time to talk about it. Those Panvich is getting answered on.
Oh, but the beads! He has beads to start this one off, and so we'll get away from that. So good work there, and Rapio having the Jotun's Wrath means that cooldown should be up a couple of times before those beads, if they so go that way, but Worst Turtle again opting more for this sort of pseudo-solo laner mentality, second item's defense.
Entry frag, baby. That is his job once again here, as we see Sap playing Uller the way it's intended. I mean, if you're jumping out on Uller, you're doing something wrong. But I do think that, again, Worst Turtle picked a character where he specifically selected something that can play on the front foot and can go in first. I think that if you end up with something like a set here, it's probably the worst possible selection you can make, because you need something that can go in before Panvich and take cooldown so that Panvich can get value. Ordinarily, that's the solo laner's job. That's what Kana's going to be doing for Rapio, where Kana walks up, uses the Earthbreaker, uses all of his cooldowns to force out the cooldowns of the enemy team.
Okay.
He's now going to get cooldowns on him.
All right, then. Let's see if Kana survives the landing. They do not. However, Panvich needed the ult to go ahead and avoid some CC immunity. Preds is also over this side of the map and silenced. Will back away from the pair of them. Great work there from Worst Turtle, just recognizing the damage output they had.
And it's partly due to the fact that Kana going for this build that doesn't have a whole lot of defense for him. He's got the Golden Blade Rush, which, you know, not necessary, I guess.
Horus?
Yeah, we'll see the Horus, so nothing really comes of it, but the Golden Blade isn't necessary for Hercules. You don't need this in a vacuum to be able to clear the waves. He already has decent damage on the abilities. You can go Contagion or something in that slot. But against something like Hades that does clear wave very effectively, it does kind of feel like you need a bit of additional help. The thing is, it's a power item. It doesn't have any defense on it. That means that no survivability in that slot, also didn't have a finished defense item there, only tier 2 of the Spellbound Kusari available when that fight went down. So he pretty much had nothing to work with in terms of survivability, versus all of the Solar Scarabs in that point having all the cooldowns and all of the items they really needed to be able to bring him down. He should be a little bit safer now that he's got a full defense item and in fact is willing to step up 1v2 here, but he's going to have to be a little more careful a little earlier on.
Just a touch here is 12 minutes in, 2-2, and all but even in the gold of, it's 400 gold, so barely any difference there as well. Important note here, silenced here, second item. I've been liking this build myself personally, where you get the Prophetic and Thebes. If that's what we're going for, silence is going to be ridiculously tanky.
Yeah, see, okay, so if we're going to talk about what we're building, Blur, that is the build that I go as well, and that is because I am the greediest human being on this planet. We'll see Sap get the beads forced out here in mid. Shouldn't be a whole lot else coming here. It's a crazy greedy build, because you have to... Rapio is around the tower. I'll let you handle this one, Blur. You take this one.
Nice. He's gone. He's left it. The moment's over. It's yours. Talk about those builds.
Yeah.
Smart.
My bad. Yeah, so this build for Silenced is incredibly slow. Both of these are stacking options that he's got for him, which, when fully stacked up, are some of the best defensive value you can get in the whole game. But when they're at this stage of the game, 6 stacks, we call it 8 maybe, on both of these items, is not going to be enough to keep him alive as the Wargs do the Gold Fury here. It is a very late game option that is very abusable early on. He will be a target for the next 5 minutes of this game.
Well, let's see whether or not he's going to remain a target, because Sap had no beads, and once again, Sap was under half health. So instead, there's aggression forward from the Niflheim Wargs here. Rapio lands under the tower and is disengaging from that one very quickly. Silence tries to pull members back in, but it isn't going to matter much here. Instead, it just ends up as a wash here in that mid lane.
And they credit to Preds for just outright diving forward into that Baron cough. And that's something that you at home need to be doing a lot more of if you're playing support. It is your job to stop that ultimate from taking place. And Horus uses the fracture there, dives directly into harm's way to make sure that his backliners don't get pulled in by that. Very well played from him.
Oh no, Echrom's in that nightmare situation again where 3 members are ganking behind the tier 1 tower. Unfortunately, he's not playing the Chernobog this time, so I can't make a pun about it being a living nightmare, but it may as well be at this point.
Yeah, but the thing is, Blur, even with all of the pressure that they've put on this dual lane, the 2-level lead that Echrom is down to Davy with, Davy, of course, being the one with that 2-level lead. I could have phrased that better, but you know what I'm talking about. The thing is, it is a vastly different landscape for the entirety of this map than we had in game number 2. Game 2, at this stage of the game, we were already talking about how the world was the oyster of the Niflheim Wargs, and they could go wherever they wanted to, they could pull whatever objective they wanted, and there would be no contest from the Solar Scarabs. This time around, though, it's only about 2,000 gold, 15 minutes in, very manageable when you consider half that lead was 2 minutes into the game last time around in game number 2. And they've got a lead somewhere to work with. In game 2, I mentioned it would be easier if, somewhere they could play aggressively. But Kana was very far ahead from just farming his brains out for the entirety of the game. They didn't have a whole lot of mid-pressure to work with. This time is a bit of a different story. Solar Scarab solo laner Spanvich is a little bit ahead of Kana, or at least even with him, which is so crucial when you don't want to fight around the dual lane. You need somewhere to be able to focus your attention that is not Echrom's lane, so that he can get all the farm that he needs.
Hopefully, with the way that this game has gone, at the very least Echrom has some safety in the tier 2 tower, but he's conceding all that pressure. The ward vision for Wargs is slowly pushing further forward. And now the next question is if Echrom isn't gonna, if Echrom isn't the target anymore from the Wargs, where do they look to next? Does it have to be Pamvich to get Connor ahead? Does it have to be Worst Turtle to stop him engaging? Because I'm looking at this and saying, oh, there's an Aura, easy pickings, but is that what Wargs should be going for?
It should realistically be a lot of metered aggression until we're looking to this next Gold Fury fight. Because Echrom is going to be sitting on his own tier 2 tower line, because look at where the wave is frozen up at the tier 1 tower line of the Niflheim Wargs. Davy's going to keep that one there to make sure that Echrom only gets purple buff XP, and that's with a question mark, because the Wargs are going to be here every time that respawns. The only way you're realistically going to get Echrom in a position where he is no longer safe is if you pull one of these objectives and force him to step up to them. Because of that, the Niflheim Wargs know we have to find somewhere else to dedicate our attention to, otherwise we just have to wait for this objective to stall out. So keep an eye on Kana. He's got to keep himself alive to make this rotation, despite the fact that it looks like the Solar Scarabs are trying to force it on him and right.
Well, Preds here will be able to block through Echrom to be forcing the beads to get through the Bifrost. Meanwhile, Kana does find a pick-off in the solo lane, 2v2. Rapio will take down Pamvich in return, so it's a 1-for-1 on the other side of the map. But we just got to watch that Echrom getting completely frozen out, and I absolutely adore the fact that Davy, even though they're ahead, just wanted to get further ahead and force that fight, because now they can look at Primal Fury.
Yep, and this is where you would have ideally liked to have had your solo laner, but he died trying to force the issue in right lane, because what the hell else are you supposed to do, man? If you're the Solar Scarabs here, you're very starved for options. You have one lane that's even. It's not even working out that well for you, as now Kana's rotating into this Pyromancer here. Everything is being taken from the Scarabs.
Now the question asked is, how are you supposed to deal with this as the Solar Scarabs? Your ADC is being frozen out of the wave. Do you just leave them alone and do what we saw for the Solar Scarabs last time, which was fighting right, but then you just lost both mini objectives on the map?
So there's a couple of different ways that you can deal with that, actually. One is a little bit more incredulous than the other one. So something that we don't see a whole lot of is Echrome isn't tethered to the duo lane, as we'll see a fight here in left.
Well, right now, pull back in would be nice. But Panvich has a lot of sustain here. Does go for the Pillar of Agony. Rapio might be in trouble here because he doesn't have any way out of this until the very end there, where he'll pick up the kill. As the rest of the members of the Solar Scarabs now are looking to get aggressive here in this side of the jungle. Gunter has no beads, but he's around a wall, so he won't get much luck. Instead, Ice Silence will spin around and fall down very nearly at this point. iDavy finally finds the last shot, but Ecom polishes up a kill on Preds.
Which feels so good for them. They're even just trading 1-for-1 because both supports end up falling in that engagement. That kill going down onto Echrome, who desperately needs the farm at this point, is still a worthwhile trade for you. And what I was getting at, Blair, is that a lot of people will see that the dual lane is not working for Echrome and think that's just the reality you have to accept. Thing is, he doesn't have to stay there, man. He can walk somewhere else. If he feels safer in mid, if they feel like they have a better matchup dealing with the aggression in left lane with the Uller instead, they could send Echrome to the mid lane. Hell, they could send Echrome to the right lane, just wherever he's getting the most farm and he feels the safest. They could hypothetically move him over. But if that's not the approach they want to take, they need to find someone else to put their attention into. Because obviously fighting into the deficit has not been working for them. They tried that all game in game number 2 and got mollywopped in game number 2. It was not close. It was an eventuality in game 2. This is a very different approach where they're trying to at least put some attention onto Panvich's lane, make sure that they have somewhere that they can start to play a little bit more aggressively, but the Wargs know that and they're bringing all the boys to the mid lane.
And I love it. Davey finally makes the rotation out. Echrome felt comfortable enough in the lane, so they kind of reversed the flip, flip the script on what you were saying. If Echrome needs to rotate out to feel safe, why don't we just rotate Davey out to make it unsafe in other lanes? And that's worked out for him as 21 minutes in. Niflheim Wargs around this 20-minute mark, they're always starting to look to the Fire Giant. And with Connor this far forward, picking up Ice Silence and taking him down from Gunter, that's a 4v5 now, and this Fire Giant's looking even more tempting.
And it didn't need anything invested there as Rapio goes up into the ult.
And this could be a problem for them. The Ram finds out some good info for them. Connor does end up very low in the back line. Panvich will pick them up as Rapio now finds another pick. Worst Turtle's ult was used as well. And this is the problem with Najar. He's all in committed. Sap very nearly gets picked off. Aegis will buy them time, but this Fire Giant is all but secured.
And Kana is 0-4 in this game so far, but has been so much more impactful in it than he did in game number 2, despite the fact that game 2 was much cleaner for them. He goes in there, pulls in Eye Silence, and they kill him without investing pretty much anything at all. Only the driving strike was required to get that kill. And then they immediately step forward, blink in again. It cost them their life. It's a worthwhile investment to get this Fire Giant that allows them to use the Horus ult to get over here and grab the Oni Fury. Pyromancer also due to spawn as well. This has broken the game wide open for them. What was a 2,000, 3,000 gold lead now is going to balloon from that point forward if the Solar Scarabs can't put a pin in it with a very convincing fight from behind.
Let's see if they've got what it takes with them. That was, I believe, an Oni Fury as well. So Oni minions now will help on the siege here. And this will be up for Niflheim Wargs. Their siege, I'm not seeing the best siege right now. This looks like more of a pick comp to me, but we'll have to see as we go ahead and start up. It looks like Wargs want this mid tier 2 first.
They're going to try to get a defense here from the Solar Scarabs as well, as at least a soft defense, but with a bracer here. That tells me that they might have wanted a little something more. Won't be able to find it as the Wargs just step in and outright destroy that tower. This is tough situation for the Scarabs, man, because with a smaller gold lead, you'd ideally like to defend these towers so that the gold lead doesn't get more out of hand, but you just weren't in time to either one, and now it's the right Phoenix being threatened by the Wargs.
It's just those enhanced minions with Oni. I wanted to call them fire minions, but they're not. They've got that Oni buff. Left side's pushing itself down on their own, and Wargs are more than comfortable just keeping their foot on the pulse.
And Rapio's hanging out in the jungle waiting for his moment. That's probably going to be your go button. He's going to the ult.
Up where he goes. Let's see where he lands. Gunther's channeling the ult. But that Phoenix, in process, falls incredibly low. Worst Tunnel misses the ult. And now Rapio eats way more damage than I think he wanted to going in.
Okay.
There's a huge turnaround potential.
Okay.
Is able to pick up several members. Gunther takes them down finally. But who got yeeted there? I think it's Connor. And he's a goner at this point. Sap finds that one. Worst Turtle is leading the charge as the pseudo solo.
And he's going to force the rest of the Niflheim Wargs back as the rest of the Solar Scarabs surge forward. Sap jumps in looking for an axe. This would be the kill if he can find it. But it looks like Davey's going to try to get out of here.
Slowed by the ring toss. Davey does have the roll. But at this point, Sap 7's in trouble. Gunter stuck around. If Aiden Punish doesn't find a home. But I silenced here. Might be in some trouble as the rest of the team hit. But it's a great hold, though, from the Scarabs at this point. That cannot be understated there. They were losing a Phoenix.
Yeah, that was real bad for them. And the Wargs should have been able to take that one. I do think that it managed to cling on. Just living on its last leg is the right lane Phoenix, and it's probably due to the fact that the engage from the Wargs was not really on the mark. I mean, you wanted to have Rapio go in there, set up for the Thoth-ult, kind of had that wombo combo going on, but they didn't end up finding the purchase on the Thoth-ult, and Rapio having to tank that Phoenix was a little weird, especially considering the fact that doesn't really find a whole lot of value, stuns out one member, but doesn't really get any follow-up, so no threat really inherent there. And then Panvich manages to jump in and get an ideal engagement where if you're in Pillar of Agony in these late game team fights for more than a couple of seconds and you're alive at the end of it, it is a crazy good engagement for you. So the Scarabs kind of get handed a good opportunity, but certainly make the most of it. They played that just about as well as you could ask for them. Now they've shut down this Fire Giant siege for the Niflheim Wargs.
And that Phoenix, like you said, still standing on its last feather before it could end up being falling. So while it is low, and that is potentially a weakness available to them, that will slowly heal back up over time. Worst Turtle, for me, is that big one, the pseudo solo. The reason there's no purchase on that Thoth-ult, Worst Turtle just goes last second, sashes in, completely shuts that down. So beautiful work there from Worst Turtle. So they now got Protector of the Jungle hitting level 20. So now they are more inclined to want to take these fights in the jungle.
Yeah, they have stalled out the game to the point that they can fight almost at parity, which is so impressive considering the fact that, you know, it was not a good position for them early on. They fell behind again, granted not to quite as incredible of a lead as it was in game number 2, but they've been fighting from a deficit the whole time, and only now are they starting to get into a position where they can start to think about stepping up against this Fire Giant. Still not going to be an easy fight for them, still level 15 on Eye Silenced, and especially with the damage that Sap just took there, it's going to be a hard contest, but one they can at least think about taking.
They might very well have to, but the big one for me is no Afro to heal them up this time. It's going to be Ice Silenced getting a hit on someone. It's not a freebie heal. So Sap still has a chalice of healing this late into the game, and thankfully healing in the kit, so should be able to heal up. But look at the warding position from the Wargs. They know that Solar Scarabs are in this little choke point, and they're just looking for poke. It's Worst Turtle who's aggressively forward. Davey beats out the ultimate, and the Worst Turtle's just running for their life. Both hunters are looking for more damage. It's Rapio finding a spot to land in on, but it's only on to Panvich, if at all, and Connor now being re-aggressed on here.
Get the beads off of Panvich, and a good root there will force the dash from Gunther, making him go back to the safety of his team. Sap takes a decent amount of damage. Kana blinks in.
This is a very aggressive push for the Wargs. They want the fight over the Fire Giant. They want the positioning, but no one was too low enough to where they felt comfortable pulling it. They're going to pull it up now, and Echrome will let everyone know, hey, they're still looking for a fight around us. Silence, though, gets a good pick up. Gunter channels the ult, but it swings wide past both the hunters.
and that's going to be their main secure tool as well. So now the surge forward from the Scarabs, they might actually look to grab this one for themselves, Blair. Without that final judgment ultimate available, it's a much easier contest for them because they don't have to worry about getting outright out-secured by Gunter on this Thoth. Although, with 2 Relic Bombs, or excuse me, Runic Bombs still available for Preds, that is still a large chunk of damage if they want to look to secure this one. So, with all of the Scarabs resetting, it's going to be the Wargs looking to pull this one again. And Kana's got the zone going deep.
He's zoning and owning at this point in time. Worst Turtle finally gets in, but it's too late. The Fire Giant goes down. Does get the ultimate up, and it's picking up Preds at this point, but there's no follow-up damage available, so Preds is more than happy to take that. Rapio disengages rapidly with the ultimate, but it's Solar Scarabs trying to pick off whatever they can. There's just nothing. Wargs clean disengage.
And I'm surprised, frankly, Blair, with the way that fight went, because you'd think after Gunter completely whiffs on the Thoth on 2 different carries that were stacked up on one another, and the way that the Solar Scarabs were moving forward, I thought that could have been a very good opportunity for them to go in. But because Worst Turtle didn't have the ultimate, which is pretty crucial for him to be able to get a lot of value in these fights, and the beads are unavailable at the time for Panvich, it makes it very difficult for their engage to really get in. You're really relying at that point on Sap hitting a stray axe on somebody and getting some good follow-up damage, or I Silenced rooting somebody that doesn't have a movement ability available, but everybody on the Wargs has at least one movement ability, so it makes it very difficult for him to be the lone engage member on their team. Without all those cooldowns available, it just wasn't really a good shot for the Scarabs to step up and feel comfortable there. They ended up having to reset and try to get back to the pit in time, but the Wargs bursted that one so quickly with this build from Davey. Not the crit build that we're accustomed to seeing, but a whole lot of penetration in that build and a whole lot of attack speed as well. Made it so that they ended up getting a pretty good shot.
Oh, bit early timed on that. Wanted to try and pull some more minions in, did Preds, but they'll go mid lane, and that buys enough time for Davey to do what Davey does best, attack the concrete, as you've told me. Preds now with that Protector Surge gets out cleanly as well. Left side Phoenix gone, and Solar Scarabs look around flabbergasted.
And that's the value of this Horus, man. Genetics has put it to some pretty effective display on the world stage, but don't forget that just about anybody's capable of using that one just like they did there. They step on the Horus ult and then make it wonder, are we all going on that Horus ult? As Panvich steps too far forward here and gets murdered. They didn't all step on the Horus ult, but you always got to have that one in mind. So with everybody in mid, it made left bird easy. Now they're going back for the mid bird.
And this is just going to be a case of smash and grab with Panvich down. Unfortunately, though, Solar Scarabs have got a lot of damage output here with these 2 hunters. But this Aura just can't find purchase and can't feel safe here. Silence is clipped by the final judgment as Preds gets CC down. The Worst Turtle eats a single CC, and Rapio cleanly picks that one up.
Naja ult not even used, but hang on, Thor ult available.
They're going back on Thoru, silenced now at 1 HP. If they find another pick, this could very well just be game. Equorm's ult's already forced. Niflheim Wargs find another pick. Silence takes down Kana. Rapio, however, still looking for more damage elsewhere as Preds pulls everyone on Thoru. That's the 3rd Phoenix down again. Solar Scarabs find themselves with the backs against the wall. And barely, Niflheim Wargs need to do barely anything, and they will win this game.
Are you familiar with the slippery slope fallacy, Blur?
It's quite a fallacy, yes.
So the slippery slope fallacy, for those that don't know at home, is where you say something leads to another thing, leads to another thing, and then what seems like something largely innocuous ends up with something incredulous and fantastical. And that's kind of been both of these last 2 games here for the Niflheim Wargs, where the one isolated incident is just the purple buff invade by Preds. It's not a crazy thing by itself, but it's kind of led to 2 different games where the dual lane of the Scarabs falls so incredibly far behind that they can't even play the map at any point in the game. And they've played both of these games at a deficit, and now the Wargs are looking to close this one out around this Fire Giant.
Certainly are, and at this point I don't think we can call it a fallacy, because it's just being proven true here as Silenced does get a good life of the party to pull members back in, but it's only Connor.
E-Chrome?
It's E-Chrome. E-Chrome's health bar was deleted by that final judgment. He's out of this engagement now in a 4v5. Panvich is trying to Pillar of Agony, but Davey doesn't give a damn, and Gunter will take him down. This has gone horrible for the slippery slope situation here for the Scarabs. Try saying that 3 times fast.
And now Kana looking for more onto Eye Silence. Gets a push, has to fall back though. Look at the Titan of the Solar Scarabs. 3 different fire waves crashing in. E-Chrome isn't available for this fight because he has to be here to defend the base. And that leaves the Niflheim Wargs with all the number advantage in the world.
And Silence put down in the ground. It is a rampage now. It's unstoppable now for Gunter. 7, 0, and 4. This last pick, though, has been putting in more work than I think we've seen Gunter put on any other god in this entire set.
Yeah, Gunter looked very good on the Agni, but even better, perhaps, on the Stoth. 40,000 damage.
Oh my
Almost
goodness.
twice the damage that anyone else in this lobby has been putting out so far. And he's been unchecked, bro. Like, that is pretty much the reason why he's been able to do this. I don't think there's a mid laner in the game that you could do this kind of, or that you couldn't do this kind of damage with the space that Gunter has had to work with. He's had no pressure on him whatsoever. Worst Turtle has been putting out fires left and right, trying to find some kind of way to get them back into the game. And they've always had so much pressure onto Sap on the Suler. His beads have constantly been under threat the whole game, which means that Gunter, the people that are supposed to be killing him, aren't even going near him. And because of that, he's been free casting, he's been living his life, he's been living his best life, in fact, on the Niflheim Wargs here. And the Solar Scarabs gonna have to do something dire.
Well, this might be looking for a pick here around this side of the map, but Davy's already up into the sky, so that's not an easy one to find. There is a big ult coming through from Worst Turtle, and Connor might be in trouble, but Davy falls to E-Chrome. That's a good look. Connor does manage to get away from the Pillar of Agony and heal up. That Oni Fury's already gone down, and now you've got Oni Fire minions to worry about. This was a gambit that went on. Will they be able to save their mid-Phoenix? Looks like the answer is yes, but barely.
Wow, they're gonna get all 3 Phoenixes back up, Blur, and the Niflheim Wargs are not happy about that. They're lacking their ADC, but with how low every single one of these birds is, and with how much members they have left available, ignore my grammar there, with enhanced Fire Giant buff still on the cards for 4 members of the Niflheim Wargs. Even without the ADC, even without Davy, they might still be able to sneak one of these away. Keep an eye on Rapio there. He's on a ward. They do know he's there, but they're spreading the map pretty thin here.
They are, and it's Worst Turtle leading the charge up. I love this. I'm calling him the pseudo-solo at this point, because he is the one leading the charge every single time. But Wargs, they're putting a lot of respect on his name.
Yeah, the Wargs have to keep an eye on him, because if somebody gets swooped up there, it is pretty much a difficult situation for them to deal with. Gunter cannot afford to get clipped here. Sash will not connect, so won't have to deal with that. Davy's on the way back, Blur. They have got their ADC back, still have Fire Giant for at least 40 more seconds. With all 3 of these birds still incredibly low, it's just going to be one of these members stepping in. Only an auto attack or 2 will do it from Davy.
And that's exactly what they're looking to try and set up. Rapio's in the back, looking to try and see if they can strip away some bubbles or get that CC. Gunter is channeling the ult, just threatening to push everyone further behind, and that's good enough. That Phoenix does end up not going down. They hold it again on the barest of HP. Now iDavy goes up. It's a bit more of a fight looking for Panvich, and he'll find it. Rapio ends up landing in. The Phoenix is still there, but it's not going to matter. E-Chrome certainly isn't. The Phoenix does finally fall, and Connor comes back in onto the fight. And with 2 members gone at this point in time, I don't know whether or not they even need to worry about these other Phoenixes. Niflheim Wargs are paying a lot of respect. They do not want to fall at the last hurdle.
Which is surprising, considering no ultimate available for Worst Turtle. In fact, no ultimates at all for the Solar Scarabs there. I guess without a full health frontline, that can be a difficult undertaking to break the base once more. Kana still half HP, still no Preds to work with for another 28 seconds or so. Just going to take their one Phoenix and go back to this enhanced Fire Giant. But Blur, this is just about the best spot the Solar Scarabs have been in all game. They had all 3 Phoenixes down at the same time in this game, and they've gotten 2 of them back alive. They have all 5 players spawning in time to contest this enhanced Fire Giant, and we're 40 minutes into this game. If you get one decisive fight in favor of the Solar Scarabs, you can scoop up the enhanced Fire Giant or not at this point and just walk your way down the mid lane and end the game. This is absolutely a position where the Solar Scarabs can get one good engage off. If they get one good axe, one good Fire Giant steal, they could steal this game.
Thor is up, and on a ward is Sap, so we've got to be careful about where they end up going here. Rapio pushing up forward with Kana, but it's all about whether Silence can come in and steal away the Fire Giant. They cannot, and now iDavy's up. Thor looking to push out as much damage as they can. Will follow up further, and Sap 7's the one under duress, but Rapio is eating a lot of damage in return. Sap 7, though, needs to get away from this.
Rapio got outplayed there. Panvich getting beaten down by Kana in the ult. Worst Turtle, no ult available, no life available there as Gunter takes him down, and it's going to be 2v5 here, Blur, as the Niflheim Wargs don't manage to wipe, but keep enough members alive that it's only 2 to defend the base.
This is going to be a miracle play of all miracle plays here. Right side Phoenix is gone, Silence stepped up, and Sap 7's now the only one left. And as strong as Anura has been in the past, I don't think the Glorious One is glory bound for a Penta here. That's going to be the game. Niflheim Wargs, go ahead and end this set 2-1.
And they successfully bring down Sap at the end of that game to make sure that they get the deicide in addition to the game, which is so crucial. I mean, that's so important, Blur. You got to make sure you let them know you got to kill all 5 of them, right?
I mean, he could have potentially been a threat, and if nothing else, it's crossing every I and every T, even a couple of L's by mistake. But with that, it's, you know, look at the storyline and everything. Gunter 9-0-9. You mentioned 40,000 player damage.
Oh, yeah.
I need to see what it's at the end of this. This man went untouched.
Yeah, and that's the thing that Thoth does. He has very bad matchups, but it's only a couple of them. If you can get a position in this game where, oh my gosh, 53,000. If you are unchecked as a Thoth, you are living in a fantasy land. Look at the damage taken from Gunter compared to everyone else in the lobby. The only person below 20k. He was unlooked at for most of that game, and he just got to do all the damage in the world. And the Niflheim Wargs make something out of nothing. They turn a purple buff invade into a set victory in this one against the Solar Scarabs.
It is a very impressive look, and commiseration there to the Solar Scarabs. Couldn't quite adapt enough in order to bring this one back. But congratulations to the Valkyries. We'll have to see whether or not any other teams adopt this strategy. And speaking of those other teams, we got SPL coming up right now, so we're going to peach it. Enjoy your games.